All right, good evening, everyone. Buenas noches, amigos y colegas. Thank you for coming to the kickoff for the Washington, D.C. Latino Caucus endorsement process. My name is Jose Barrios, and I'm the president of the D.C. Latino Caucus, which serves as the preeminent voice for ensuring the political participation of the Latino community at all levels of government and before the D.C. Democratic Party. These proceedings are being recorded and will be provided to our membership, and we will also provide a transcript in Spanish on request. The meeting is also being live streamed to our current YouTube channel, which you can find on our website at www.dclatinocaucus.org. The DC Latino Caucus is considering endorsement for candidates running in the June 2022 Democratic primary for the District of Columbia. Tonight, our members will be hearing from candidates and supporting individuals in races for mayor, council chair, council wards 1, 3, 5, and 6, council at large, attorney general, U.S. delegate, and U.S. representative. Endorsement will determine which candidates DCLC and its members will provide with financial support, canvassing, and get out the vote efforts. The DC Latino Caucus sent a questionnaire on Latino issues to all known candidates of record. As of this evening, running in the Democratic primary. As of this evening, we have received over 35 responses, which have been provided to our members to help them choose their candidates for endorsement, and they're also available on our website. And again, a video of these proceedings will be sent to our voting members to help them with their selections. Electronic voting will begin this evening at 8:30 p.m. Voting members will receive an email inviting them to vote. Voting members are anyone who paid 2022 dues to the DC Latino Caucus as of February 21st, 2022. The first round of voting begins at 8:30 p.m. tonight, and it ends on Saturday, March 26th at 12 noon. Endorsement requires 51% of the member vote. Of the votes cast. Any race in which no candidate receives 51% will continue to a second runoff vote between the top two candidates, beginning Saturday at 1 p.m. and ending Sunday, the 27th at 6 p.m. And that runoff, if it occurs, will again require 51% of votes cast in order to earn endorsement. Results should be announced no later than 12 noon, Monday, March 28th. At this time, I would like to introduce the hardworking DC Latino Caucus board members, many of whom are involved in planning for and running this meeting, and many of whom are also dedicated staff members for various candidates you'll be hearing from tonight. First, I would like to introduce our executive committee. In addition to myself as president, I'd like to introduce Claudia Barahona, our vice president, Aminta Davis. Thank you. Aminta Davis, treasurer. Pamela Gomez, our secretary. Juan Ulloa, our communications director. Franklin Garcia, male ex officio to the DC Democratic State Committee as Latino Caucus committeeman. Luz Martinez, female ex officio, DC Latino Caucus committee woman to the Democratic State Committee. The remaining board members are Jacqueline Casañeda, Patricia Eguino, Anthony Musa, Ruth Pagani, John Rodriguez, and Margie Yeager. Pamela Gomez, our secretary, and Claudia Barahona, our vice president, will be serving as timekeepers this evening. Anthony Musa will be the owner of our speaking list. Moving on to the rules for our meeting. Once again, our meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. You can catch that on our website. This may be handy if you would like to monitor the proceedings before joining if you need to come and go. We will proceed race by race with all speakers for a race concluding before moving to the next race. We will be doing the races in the following order: mayor, council chair, council wards 1, 3, 5, and 6, council at large, attorney general, U.S. delegate, and U.S. representative. For each race, all candidates or a single representative from their campaign present will speak for up to 90 seconds. We will have the timekeepers, Pamela and Claudia, who will advise you on your time. Once all candidates in that race have spoken, you will be asked to leave the meeting or enter a waiting room to allow the members to discuss. If you enter a waiting room, you can come back at the conclusion of the discussion for that race. If you leave the meeting, we really appreciate your having come. Once the candidates have left, DCLC board members who are interested in speaking will do so for 90 seconds. And then after that, will be followed by other individuals who have signed up as part of the registration process for 1 minute each. And we will do our best to alternate between candidates until all individuals who have signed up have spoken. We will then move on to the next race until we're finished. Tonight, there will be no questions and answers. There will be no screen sharing, debating, or anything other than the 90 seconds of speaking time for each candidate. We will be turning off the public chat. We have turned off the public chat to keep the focus on the candidates, but you can still send a private message to me or other co-hosts if you need to get our attention. We do ask of our participants to please maintain civility. Please direct your comments to me as the chair and not to other participants. We also ask that you keep your comments focused on why you or your preferred candidate are the best one to represent the Latino community. And lastly, we're asking that everybody please stay muted unless you have been recognized by the chair to speak. Okay, so during the registration process, we did ask people to sign up for the preferred candidates. We did have a, so at this time, I'm going to ask Anthony to start presenting the speaking list, which is based on the request that people made during the registration. As of last Monday, we have only been adding candidates or the representatives and DC Latino Caucus members only who have been registered as of that date due to the volume of requests that we received. From the floor now, if you see a mistake on the list and you're signed up for the wrong speaker, please let me know. And also, if you are a DC Latino Caucus registered member only, and there is one candidate for which you would like to speak, especially someone who has no speakers, please let me know now as well. We can unfortunately not accept other signups again due to volume. So at this point, I will open up the floor and invite individuals to view the speaking list. We'll keep it up through Ward 6 for a few moments. If there's any comments or no comments, then we'll move on to the second half of the screen.
All right, I'm going to keep it up for a few minutes.
Well, not a few, it will be a minute.
Sorry.
Yeah. So is there anyone who sees an error they would like to correct, or an existing registered DC Latino Caucus member who does not see themselves here and who would like to speak up for one candidate, particularly if they do not currently have anyone to speak for them?
Sorry, I'm going to zoom so everyone can see.
Yes, it would be me for, hello, let me introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Carter, and I might have to speak for Andre Davis. He's actually in a debate at this moment.
Okay, that's
Carter,
great.
C-A-R-T-E-R, I'm sorry.
C-A-R-T-E-R.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Okay, actually, Anthony, would you please put him over where Andre Davis's name is, since she will be speaking on his behalf, so she'll get 90 seconds.
I'm not sure if he will or will not, so I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else?
Yes, Abel Lopez. On behalf of
Yes, Mr. Lopez. Who would you like to speak for?
Phil Mendelson.
Also, Joe, I do see Andre Davis's hand raised.
Okay. So we'll add Abel Lopez to Phil Mendelson. Mr. Davis?
I don't see the rest of the thing. I'm here to speak on behalf of Zachary Parker and Dexter William and Kenya McDuffin, but I can't see if I'm in those lists. So
I'm sorry, who's speaking, please?
this is Ricardo Villalba.
So Ricardo, we signed you. You are actually signed up for Zachary.
Yes,
and
I see that.
yes,
And
you are. you are signed up based on the request that you made during the registration process.
And then I try to sign up also for Mr. Kenya McDuffie and Dexter William, who's running for at-large. Can I do that?
Can you select one of those individuals in the interest of time that you prefer to speak for?
Dexter William and Kenya McDuffie.
Okay, can we go with Dexter then?
I can do both of them.
And you already are speaking for Zachary also. We're trying to, keep as many speaking positions open as possible.
All right.
Able to do Kenyon McDuffie, who we could use another speaker for Mr. McDuffie.
That is true. Would you like to
Okay,
speak for
so
Mr. McDuffie?
I speak for Mr. McDuffie. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anthony. Anyone else?
Chairman Barrios, Franklin Garcia here, if I may, at least to put my names before the following, even if I'm not allowed to speak for all three. For Chairman Phil Mendelson, former Councilmember Vincent Orange, and Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Okay, just a second. Anthony, so Franklin is a member of our board, so he would go into the gray for board members. And as a board member, you can give him all three.
How do you make a new? Here, I'm just gonna do this until I figure out how to solve that, because I don't know how to apparently do Excel.
No, Franklin's going to speak for Muriel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, well,
Hello.
that's so much easier. And then I'm sorry, Franklin, what was the other candidate that you said?
Mayor Muriel Bowser, Chairman Phil Mendelson, and former Councilmember Vincent Orange.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia. Ms. Aguino, were you making a request?
Yes, hi. Yes, I registered to speak for two candidates, but I don't see my name.
Okay, I apologize. We got a lot of requests. Well, which ones did you request?
So I will be speaking for Aaron Palmer for council chair and council member Nadeau for Ward 1. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Just 1 second. Yeah, go ahead and just add him. Yeah, right there. Or add Ms. Aguino right there. Okay, yes, Ms. Corrales.
How are you? Good afternoon.
Hi.
I would like to speak also on behalf of Kenyon McDuffie.
Okay,
Excellent. Thank you.
okay, 1 or 2 more requests next.
And I'm sorry, who, can you please spell your name? I missed you your name there. The last person who wants to speak for Mr. McDuffie.
Maria Patricia Corrales.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Mr. President,
I don't know.
this is Edgardo Guerrero, and I also like to speak on behalf of Kenya McDuffie.
Okay.
okay. So go ahead and add that, and then we're going to, I think, close this down. Yes,
Hey, Joe, habla Corina Garay.
hello.
I'd like to speak for Deirdre Brown, Ward 3.
Okay,
Thank you.
And hi, Jose, this is Yelin Zhang. I just have a couple of corrections under the at-large race for Dexter Williams. So instead of Dexter and Yelin, it'll be Gustavo Paredes. And
okay, hold on just 1 second. Okay, so Mr. Paredes had previously registered, but he is not a registered DC Latino Caucus member.
gotcha, but
Okay.
he's on the team.
But Mr. Williams is coming to speak on his own behalf, correct?
Well, he is going to speak as the candidate, but also Ricardo Villalba is speaking on his behalf too.
So Mr. Villalba, you had signed up for Zachary originally, and then we added you also for Mr. McDuffie. I think that's, given the amount of time that we have tonight, I think that's about as much as we can accommodate.
And Mr.
Understood.
President.
I'm sorry, please, just 1 second, if I could finish with the previous person. So Yellen, are we set?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. Could we still add Gustavo then, Gustavo Paredes to Dexter
Unfortunately,
Williams?
no, he is not a registered Latino Caucus member as of this date, and he does not fall into either the board member category or active DCLC member.
Okay, and even though he's on our team, that's,
That is correct.
Okay,
You
gotcha.
get one person from your team to speak, and that's the candidate, if he's coming.
yes,
Okay.
he will be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr.
Miss-
President, this is Sonia Gutierrez.
Hello, Ms.
Hello.
Gutierrez, always a pleasure.
It's same here. I'm here to speak on behalf of Phil Menderson.
We already have you on the list, but please will
Okay.
confirm that. Yes, we have you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Okay, at this time, I think we're gonna.
Hello, this is Anna Harvey. May I just make a comment? I'm here to speak on behalf of Chairman Mendelson, but he's actually here. So he will be speaking
Okay, instead of
Thank you.
yourself.
instead of me, yes, and you will see my name.
And Mr. President,
Yes,
I would like to speak for my 60s, or well, my 90 seconds as a board member for Sala for Ward 1 Council.
okay.
Mr. President,
Yes, council member. Or who is speaking?
Mr. President, this is Nate Fleming, candidate for at-large. I was just wondering if I could speak for myself.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Okay, so.
Good evening.
This is very confusing.
Why doesn't everyone raise their hand?
Yeah.
If you are not on, if you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute. At this point, we're gonna move on with the meeting. Unless you're a candidate and you don't see yourself on here.
Councilwoman Bonds is raising her hand.
Councilmember Bonds,
Oh.
yes, hello.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not quite sure of the process, but I will be speaking for myself.
Of course,
Thank you so much.
we have added you to the list. Okay, thank you. All right, any other candidates that we've missed especially?
Yes, good evening. Here, good evening, Mr. President. Here, David Guerra to speak in behalf of the council member Brian Nadeau.
Okay. All right, Mr. Guerra, you are a member and you're registered. We will add you to Councilmember Nadeau.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, okay, we are going to get started at this time. So please remove the screen share. Anthony, thank you. I know that was quite challenging. Okay. All right. All right, we're gonna, without further ado, we're gonna begin with the mayor's race. So the following candidates are running: Malachi Black, Muriel Bowser, James Butler, Leland Core, Andre Davis, Antonia Donald, Robert White, and Trayon White. Mr. Malachi Black, Muriel Bowser, James Butler, and Leland Core have not sent representatives this evening, so we will start with Mr. Andre Davis. Mr. Davis, you have 90 seconds.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Carter. I'm speaking for Mr. Andre Davis today.
Thank you.
So today I would like to pinpoint the things that we want to talk about. For one, he grew up in DC. He was a teacher for over 10 years. He recognizes that the Latino community is a base low percentage when it comes to jobs. They were mainly targeted during the COVID pandemic. They lost their jobs and it was pretty hard for them to get back essentials. Another thing is he studied Spanish for over 3 decades. So he's bilingual. He understands that Latinos have a little bit of a knowledge and programs that help them get the professionalism that they need to speak proper English or understand what they need to do to go about their daily lives. Most of the time they have to work for organizations that only speak their language, and instead of expanding them, he also goes with the bill that lets people vote, even if they're not citizens. He believes that if they live in this community, they drink in this community, they work in this community, they should be able to vote in this community. Another thing, I'm sorry, am I done?
No.
Okay, another thing is he does not believe that the jail system should not be isolated from family members. He believes that DC should be able to have family members stay in the area, that where their families can see them and not be moved to an isolated area where they won't be able to see their family and they can come back to the civilization as a normal human being. And that's for Blacks and Latinos.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for speaking on behalf of Andre Davis. Anthony, I just got a message that Lynn French wants to be removed from the list. She will not be speaking for Ms. Nadeau.
Yes, I am tracking that as well as several other people that messaged me in the chat. So
okay.
I see all of your chats. I'm going to fix it and then send it to the rest of the board.
Okay, but I would not add any more people at this point.
Yes.
Okay, next candidate, Antonio Donald did not send representative. So Robert White, Luz Martinez, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Luz Martinez, and I'm campaign manager for Robert White's mayoral campaign. He's currently on stage at a debate a few feet away. I've served on the board of the DC Latino Caucus for the last 2 years and represent the caucus as the female ex officio member on the Democratic State Committee. Robert is a native Washingtonian who has worked in all 3 branches of the government. During his time on the council, he has introduced several pieces of nationally recognized legislation, all which aim to better the lives of working families and everyday people. He's a leader that DC and our Latino community need right now. The current mayor has served 2 terms, and in that time, the Latino community has seen little, if any, progress. Families have been displaced as the city gives away land to developers. Brown students continue to fall further behind their white peers in schools. We continue to be criminalized for vending the same food that is celebrated in mayoral Hispanic Heritage Month proclamations. During the pandemic, life-saving health advisories were only disseminated in English. Excluded workers had to turn to the council to ask for money to feed their families. And in record-setting budgets of $16 to $19 billion last fiscal year, when Latino businesses were given $1.2 million in business grants, it was seen as a victory. Under Mayor Robert White's administration, Latinos who want to serve will not be relegated to the mayor's office on Latino affairs, only to be called out 1 month out of the year. He is ready to implement new and better processes. Students and families will have the support that they need to thrive. Our businesses will have true support that they need to keep their doors open.
Thank
We
you.
will finally
Thank you, Ms.
implement
Martinez.
access laws.
Time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luz Martinez, DC Latino Caucus board member. Okay, moving on. Are there? That is the last person from a candidate campaign that we have for mayor. So at this time, I would like to ask Ms. Carter, who spoke, and Ms. Luz Martinez to either drop from the meeting. Thank you for joining us so that we can have discussion, or you may choose the waiting room for mayor if you want to come back for after we're done. Okay. All right. Now we're moving on to other board members. There's only one signed up, and that is Jacqueline Castañeda for Robert White. You have 90 seconds.
Am I going right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. My name is Jacqueline Castaneda. I am a board member of the DC Latino Caucus, and I'm here to proclaim my endorsement for Robert White. What I felt was an instinctual support ended up being justifiable as I began to learn more about what Robert plans and has done already within our community. There may not always be something that Robert can understand, or we may not always agree on some things, but one of the things that I respect and admire of Robert that I think will make him a great leader for our community is that he remains transparent, he remains honest, and he continues to try to understand and learn from us, which is something that we desperately need within our community. We have been able to gauge what our Latino community has desperately needed support on, which has been housing crisis, which has been on education, which has been on health. And these are things that Robert has been able to share within our board and within the community of what he plans to do. And it definitely involves the community. it is time that we are able to have someone who is genuine, who is understanding and compassionate, because within our community, we have been displaced from being involved in any of these conversations for a long time. And even now, as within our organization, as we're striving to bridge that gap between the Latino community and politics, we still don't necessarily have that much support. And with the support of Robert, I definitely genuinely believe we can hold that together. And so I strongly support and endorse and encourage the rest of the board and members to consider Robert White for mayor of DC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castañeda, DCLC board member. Okay, at this time, we're going to move on to the remaining speakers, which will have 60 seconds or 1 minute to speak. Pamela, are you ready with the timer? Pamela? Claudia? You are? Okay, thank you. Okay. Our first speaker for Muriel Bowser is Hector Torres. 1 minute, sir.
Well, I would like to thank everyone for allowing me this moment, Mr. President. I appreciate the time. I believe, in Muriel Bowser, for one, she is a lifelong resident of the District of Columbia, born in our city. And also, I found that during the recovery period and during this pandemic, she did an exemplary job that actually ranked Washington, D.C. as the number one destination in the country with the best health record during this time. I also find that she has done a great deal in terms of including basically the excluded workers per se, in terms of finding financial relief for them and making an effort at being inclusive in this area. She worked very strongly with the hospitality community, which in fact hires a lot of minority members, including Latinos in this particular area. She has worked very diligently at trying to include members of the Latino community within her cabinet, and has in so many different ways sought ways of increasing.
Mr. Torres, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Torres. It was good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker will be for Robert White, James Standard. James actually texted me and said he might be late, so it looks like he's not here. We will move on. For Muriel Bowser, Mr. Ted Loza, former DC Latino Caucus president.
Buenas noches, good evening. My name is Ted Loza. I am the founder of the DC Latino Pact, which gave birth to the DC Latino Caucus, so that our voices can be heard, and we can have a platform just for moments like this, where candidates can come and share the mission on how to address the issues of most concerns to us. I believe I am here to speak on behalf of Muriel Bowser, who I believe deserves re-election. She has done a good job around housing, healthcare, education, jobs with fair pay, and advocating for fair pay, which I believe are the 4 pillars of every society that we need in moving our community forward. So I encourage all my former friends and colleagues currently serving at the leadership to please support Muriel Bowser and give her another term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loza. I would note that because I looked at the schedule wrong, I skipped over Franklin Garcia, who wants to speak for Mayor Bowser. We'll come back to you in just a moment, Franklin. First, we'll hear from somebody for Robert White. So we will first hear from John Green. Pedro Rubio for Robert White.
Hi, it's great to be with you guys. I am a former board member of the DC Latino Caucus back in 2013. So it's a pleasure to be with you guys. It's been a while. So I'm here to endorse, I hope that you guys would be consider endorsing Robert White for mayor. I have known Robert White since 2014. He has been a friend of mine and a friend of the Latino community since he's been in office. Under his administration, there's going to be a focus on providing language access, which has been a barrier for many years in our community. Also, a focus on affordable housing, especially for the Latino community that has been so plagued by, they used to live in Ward 1, now they live in Ward 4. And not Ward 4 is going to be PG County next, you know? So it has changed dramatically, and it'll be nice when somebody step in and protect us. Another one is just focus in hiring Latino teachers for the young youth. As a DC public school student, I know how important it is to have somebody who looks like you as a teacher. And so I think the focus of that is very important to our youth, especially the next generation of the DC Latino Caucus board members. So I'm super excited to endorse Robert White.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us, Mr. Rubio. We're now going to go back to Franklin Garcia, who is a board member, and I accidentally stepped over him. So Mr. Garcia, you have 90 seconds to speak for Muriel Bowser. I'm sorry, if you are not speaking, please put yourself on mute, so that, unless you're the timekeeper, so that we don't interrupt the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Barrios. Franklin Garcia here, former U.S. Shadow Representative, former founder of the DC Latino Caucus. Very excited to see so many people come and join us. This is exactly, as Ted mentioned, what we're about, trying to get the community engaged. I am pleased to announce the endorsement for Mayor Muriel Bowser. Keep in mind that when Mayor Bowser came on board, she actually held on to key Latino appointments from prior administration, and she now has still some key appointments, some Latino key appointments. So it's not just about the Office on Latino Affairs, though it is honorable to mention that she elevated somebody from the community that truly works in the community, Jackie Reyes, to a higher position. So we were very pleased to see that. Muriel Bowser has been key. She has really risen to the occasion during this pandemic and has truly benefited the immigrant community and the Latino community in her leadership. So I am going to be very pleased to see her come on for a third term. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Speaking for Muriel Bowser, Franklin Garcia is a Latino Caucus board member and our male ex officio to the state committee. I believe I saw Mr. James Tendarek enter the room. Mr. Tendarek, you had signed up for Robert White. You have 60 seconds.
Awesome, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is James Tander. I am a member of DC Latino Caucus. I also work as a teacher in Brightwood, so I work with mostly Latinos in the area. And to me, I'm here to endorse Robert White as a candidate for the DC Latino Caucus. To me, he represents the future of DC. I have been a teacher in DC for the past 7 years, and I've seen our schools just really falter from a lot of the policies in which Mayor Bowser is currently endorsing, particularly with impact culture and the star rating framework. I'm here to endorse Robert White because to me, he's a candidate that will change these policies, which will only help not only retain our teachers in the school as a teacher right now, but as well as make a more joyful, hardworking place for our Latino students to work, to be in the district itself. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Thank you for calling in. Okay, for Muriel Bowser, Maria Patricia Corrales.
I'm sorry, muy buenas noches todos, ¿cómo están?
Buenas noches.
Pleasure. I'm actually going to be speaking on behalf of Muriel Bowser. My name is Maria Corrales. I'm an ex-member of the DC Latino Caucus, a workforce resident, a small business owner, a proud Washingtonian, a proud Latina, and supporter of Muriel Bowser. I'm here tonight to support her because I believe she is the right person. When I met her back in many years ago, I think she has the strength that she has now to support all of us. She's a mom, she's a daughter, she's a sister, public servant, and consider my friend also. She thought smart, loyal, joyful, and committed and determined. She cares more about DC than anyone I know. As our mayor, she has kept her promise and got results. I'm one of them. I'm an actually result of her transition from council to the mayor. As a business owner, as a representative of Fiesta DC, she has helped us to show our community out in the street and help us also to create a strong bond with our community. She closed DC General and made DC Public Schools the fastest improvement school system in the country. She has kept us safe through the pandemic. She thought to get our kids back to school before other jurisdictions in the country. She's throwing every resource to tackle the violent crime in the city, and she's investing billions in improving our roads, parks, and recreation centers. But perhaps the most important is she cares for the DC Latino community. And I know.
Mr. Corrales.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Ms. Corrales. Those were the last speakers for any candidate other than Robert White, so the remaining speakers are all for Mr. White. John Green, 60 seconds for Robert White. John Green. Oscar Montiel, 60 seconds for Robert White.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Oscar Montiel, and I am DC native. I believe we must choose wisely when selecting a candidate to endorse. We must look at their demonstrated values, their positions, and their accomplishments. As an at-large member, Councilmember, Robert White has demonstrated time over time how he has changed that the district needs. We've had 8 years of what feels like nothing but economic development while continuing to leave our most vulnerable population behind. Sorry. I have been particularly impressed by Councilmember Robert White's leadership on the DC Council. Bills such as the Sexual Harassment Data Collection and Reporting Act meant to bring transparency. Birth to 3 for All DC Act meant to put the district on a path to universal early childhood education. And Returning Citizens Opportunity to Succeed Amendment Act meant to uplift and give one of our most disenfranchised population a chance to succeed when returning home for a few. Those are just a few examples of proof that Robert White is the embodiment of putting people first. His tireless campaign's efforts are greatly appreciated. I wish him the best and urge the DC Latino Caucus to endorse Robert White.
Thank you, Mr. Montiel. For Robert White, Jennifer Blimmer, 60 seconds. Jennifer Blimmer. Ms. Tiffany Johnson for Robert White, 60 seconds. Tiffany Johnson. I feel like I'm in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Okay, Brianna McGowan. 60 seconds for Robert White.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Bree. I am a Ward 5 resident. I live in Edgewood. I've worked with DCLC in the Rank the Vote DC Coalition, and it has been an honor fighting alongside some of DCLC's brilliant leaders. I have watched Councilmember White grow as a leader, intent on connecting with people, trying to do what is helpful and right by Washingtonians. I appreciate that he is passionate about education and has a voting record of being with and for the people. I see this as an opportunity to push him to be a more vocal supporter of issues and to be bold. Our current mayor is selling our city out to the highest bidder, centers corporate interests and bulldozes our homeless neighbors and brags about a $17 substitute teacher wage. It's time that we have new leadership that can move DC towards a more liberatory future by using the executive power to protect and center our most vulnerable, invest in solidarity economy, and balance tensions in our district with transparency and integrity. I think mayoral candidate Robert White is not only the candidate who can beat Bowser, but I truly think he's the best candidate for leading DC closer towards a more equitable.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. Thank you. Your time has expired.
I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. Last chance for Jennifer Blimmer or Tiffany Johnson.
Jennifer Blimmer said that she's on mute. She needs to be unmuted.
Juan, can you try to unmute her? Oh, Jennifer just entered the waiting room. I'm not sure why. Okay.
She's joining. Just give me a moment.
Okay. All right. While Ms. Blimmer is joining, we're going to, after Ms. Blimmer speaks, we're going to move on to the council chair race, where we have 3 candidates: Calvin Gurley, Phil Mendelson, Aaron Palmer. For the benefit of those joining late, the first round of speakers will be the candidates themselves. We currently have Mr. Mendelson and in attendance, and I believe Aaron Palmer is here as well. They will each have 90 seconds to speak on their own behalf. At that time, we will ask them to leave so that we can have member discussion. Board members will speak after that for 90 seconds for those who are interested in speaking, and then other speakers will get 60 seconds. Is Ms. Blimmer available? All right, unfortunately, we are going to have to move on. Okay, so for council chair, we don't have a representative from the Calvin Gurley campaign. So next is Mr. Phil Mendelson, who is the incumbent chair of the council. Mr. Mendelson, you have 90 seconds. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone who's attending tonight. And I want to thank the Latino Caucus for your support of my elections and re-elections in the past. My partner, Anna Harvey, was going to speak for me because I was conducting a town hall tonight, but it ended early. So I appreciate this opportunity. I'm going to begin with this. I am very proud of my record delivering on progressive values. If you go to my website, mendelsonforchairman.com, you will see a page listing my progressive values that I have delivered on, such as universal paid leave, civil legal services, where I've not only protected that program, but substantially increased funding for civil legal services, including immigrant legal services. Money for affordable housing. I put money in, added to what the mayor's put in the budget year after year, including the Housing Production Trust Fund, affordability covenants, community land trusts. I was the author of extending rent control for 10 years. I'm the one who worked with Montgomery County and Prince George's County to have a regional coordinated effort to increase the minimum wage. I've always had support of working families, organized labor in my campaigns. I know that public safety is a major concern. I want to speak to that for a second. I'm the one who appointed the Police Reform Commission last year. I was the deciding vote on the legislation to establish such a commission. I'm very proud of the work that they did. I've introduced a bill that would strengthen accountability for our police officers. I'm not one who believes.
Your time has expired, Mr. Chairman.
I thought I had 90 seconds.
Yes. Your time has expired.
I'm sorry. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Mendelson, for your words and for joining us tonight. Ms. Erin Palmer.
Thank you. Hola, placer estar aquí con ustedes. Me llamo Erin Palmer y postulo para presidenta del Consejo Municipal de DC. Soy madre, tengo 3 hijos, Adrián, Mateo y Javier. Por profesión soy abogada de ética, trabajando antes de esta campaña para el Poder Judicial Federal. Y también soy una Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner en el Distrito 4. He vivido en Chile, Nicaragua y Ecuador. La familia de mi esposo es de México y él y su familia hablan español. Quiero que mis hijos sepan que muchas personas en DC también hablan español. Pienso que nuestro gobierno, incluyendo el Consejo Municipal de DC, debe a todos los residentes el mismo acceso a los servicios y programas, y eso incluye a los que no hablan inglés. Pienso que el gobierno tiene la obligación de apoyar a las necesidades básicas de todas las personas de DC, como vivienda, educación pública y atención médica, sin importar su estado migratorio. Y también creo en la democracia y que las personas con residencia permanente deben tener el derecho de votar en nuestras elecciones locales, personas como mis vecinos. Espero que haya ganado su apoyo y sus votos este 21 de junio. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer, for speaking. Chairman Mendelson and Ms. Palmer, thank you for joining us this evening. At this time, we're going to ask you to drop from the call, or if you want to participate later, you can always go to a waiting room as well. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
I'm going to step out, but can Anna Harvey stay?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to board member speakers, starting with Mr. Franklin Garcia for Chairman Mendelson for 90 seconds.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Muchas gracias y buenas noches. Yo quiero apoyar la candidatura de Chairman Mendelson. Este señor ha sido muy bueno para nuestra comunidad. Recuérdense que él fue el que nos ayudó a que le diéramos licencias a los indocumentados. Eso no se olvida. También cada vez que lo hemos llamado a él, él siempre ha dicho presente. Eso es muy importante porque muchas veces vemos los políticos que solamente se muestran a estos forums, pero no están disponibles muchas veces cuando uno tiene que hablar con él. Cuando yo fui el Shadow Representative, el señor Mendelson apoyó bastante mi candidatura y quiso siempre apoyar para que eventualmente tengamos un concejal en el consejo. Así que yo contento de apoyar la candidatura de Phil Mendelson. Muchas gracias. Buenas noches. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias. Me agrada mucho oír algunos de las personas hablando en español para que las personas que prefieren el español puedan entender también. Thank you. Okay, so speaking for Ms. Erin Palmer from the board, DC Latino Caucus member Patricia Eguino.
Hi, I'm Patricia Eguino. I'm board member and chair of the outreach committee of the DC Latino Caucus, as well as a vaccination research scientist for the FDA. 2022 will be the year in which hardworking Latinos will no longer be used as pawns by employers, by government and others who would exploit them for their own end. The winds of change are upon us. We need a council chair who puts the needs of the workers first, not one that puts the interests of the corporations first. We need a council member who can speak Spanish, who can truly speak to the heart of el pueblo. We need a council chair who believes in government transparency, not one who shrouds potential frauds, waste, and abuses in the shadows. We need a council chair who fully supports paid family leave and understands the challenges women face to put food on the tables for their children. We need Erin Palmer more than ever as the next council chair. Voten por Erin Palmer, la siguiente presidenta para el Consejo del Distrito Federal de DC.
Ms. Eguino and other participants, I would remind us please to keep our comments focused on the benefits of the candidates that you are supporting and why they are the best candidate for the Latino community. Okay, speaking next for Mr. Phil Mendelson. So those are the board members who have spoken. Next, we are going to have the other speakers who have signed up, beginning with Mr. Hector Torres for Phil Mendelson for 1 minute.
It's an honor again to speak on behalf of Mr. Mendelson. I'm a resident with my husband, Jay Haddock, of the District of Columbia for 43 years. And one of the things that we have become to value greatly is experience. And Mr. Mendelson certainly has an awful lot of positive and workable experience in his back. One of the things I have found in dealing with Mr. Mendelson that I have approached on many issues to support the culture of the Latino community, to support the education within the Latino community, and there will be other speakers who will address that here. He is also a person that believes in equality and employment, and mind you, one of the things that he did very much to give an identity was the licensing issue in Washington, D.C. that made a quantum leap for the Hispanic community, for the Latino community. I believe in a person that has experience, and he does. He is an accessible council chair. He is a thought provoker, and he is innovative. He is very fair in his attempt, and I've had the pleasure of coming to him for very many times to ask for his support on uniquely programs that affect the Latino community.
Mr. Torres, your time has expired.
Thank you. You didn't get a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. I was informed that another mayoral candidate has appeared on the call. So we will go back to that race for just a moment, only for the candidate. And that is Mr. Trayon White, who has joined us. Mr. White, thank you for joining us. And if you'd like to speak, you have 90 seconds.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Trayon White. For those who may not know me, served in the district 21 years, fighting for social justice for marginalized people in the district. I grew up here, raised by my grandmother and mother here in DC. I started a nonprofit called Helping Inner City Kids Succeed. Eventually came on board to run for school board, partly because I saw what was going on in the District of Columbia government just wasn't working. My track record and my voting record speaks to who I am. I'm gonna stand on the front line and fight against big business to ensure that people have power in the district. And it's imperative that we utilize our resources in the district to create opportunities like access to more wraparound services in and around schools, access to equity when it comes to resources in our community. I currently chair the DC Office on Latino Affairs. And so I must admit that this is all new for me as a council member, but I'm learning each and every day. In fact, we had the the budget oversight hearing today with several organizations in the Latino speaking community. And it's been amazing what we've been able to do in the last 2 years by supporting them with additional resources to empower them during the pandemic, to be able to cope with society. And so I've been committed to excellence across the district, and I'm a people's person. And I'm committed to excellence in the community. I'm using my power to elevate people.
Mr. White, your time has expired.
Councilmember, thank you. Councilmember White, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us. So we had moved on to the council members race, so we will return to that. We last heard from Mr. Hector Torres. I'm sorry, if you're not speaking to me, put yourself on mute. The next speaker is for Aaron Palmer, Mr. James Tandaric. 60 seconds, please.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, everyone. James Tandaric, a Latino teacher, also as a Latino ANC commissioner. I'm here to endorse Aaron Palmer for two really simple reasons. One, she is the only council chair candidate that is receiving public financing. So what that means is that when other opponents are using corporations and businesses for money, she is using the local people to help support her grassroots campaign. And number two, experience. She works as an ANC commissioner, which means that she works directly with the local community to help support and elevate them. As an ANC commissioner myself, our job is to be able to help support and empower our local communities to help thrive. And to me, Aaron Palmer is that candidate for it. She will be there to help support your communities on no matter what you need to work on, and she will be there for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tandaric. So in these kinds of meetings where we have a lot of people, we have to maintain a bit of flexibility. Sometimes people can't be here on time. My understanding is that Mr. Leland Core, who is also running for mayor, has joined us. So just like we gave Mr. Trayon White 90 seconds, even though we've moved on, Mr. Core, if you would like to speak to your campaign at this time for 90 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Again, I won't be before you long. My background is a little different than the other of the candidates that came up. I have a very extensive corporate background. I spent most of my time running large-scale organizations. But what I will say is that as I look at the Latino community and the things that are required, as I responded on the survey, the questionnaire that came back, I think one of the things we need to do to increase the students or increase the teacher rate is that we need to recruit outside of the area. So I have a very extensive background in recruiting and to help bring teachers from other regions that will help this as well. Aside of that, my level of education and teaching, I spent a great deal amount of time working with people of all walks of life, and I've worked all the way down to the Rio Grande and to the Mexican border in some of my past life. So I have a very extensive background. I understand that some of the things that are required. I think the biggest thing is education, development, and training. And as we do that, then bridging the gaps that so deplague and so rob the Latino community. And that's just the things that I think that the beginning that it needs. Thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you, Reverend Core. Okay, returning to the council chair race. I apologize, I have multiple windows open here. Okay, here we go. So we last heard from James Tandaric. So for Phil Mendelssohn, Mr. Ted Loza for 60 seconds, for 1 minute, please.
Buenas noches, nuevamente, Ted Loza here, founder of the DC Latino Caucus, which gave birth to the DC Latino Caucus. Mr. Mendelson has already shared some of his background, and I'm just here to confirm and endorse Mr. Chairman Mendelson, who has been a very good job as an advocate of the people and as someone who has the leadership and temperament to lead the city council as a whole. I do appreciate the language capability presented by one of his challengers here. That is always very much appreciated as an advocate of the Latino community. Please let's elect Chairman Mendelson for another term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. For Aaron Palmer, Tiffany Johnson. Tiffany Johnson. For Phil Mendelson, Ms. Sonia Gutierrez, 1 minute.
Hi, my name is Sonia Gutierrez. I've been in this city for over 50 years. I'm the President Emeritus, CEO, and founder of the Carlos Rosario Public Charter School that has trained over 100,000 immigrants during my 48 years with the school. I'm here totally supporting Phil Mendelson. It does not matter at all whether he speaks Spanish or not. He's always in interaction with the Latino community. I can tell you that whenever in the past I needed to consult Phil or get his support, he was always there for me, and he always deliver. If you ask Maria Gomez, founder of Mary Center, Rebecca Medrano, co-founder of Gala Theater, Maria Tuqueva, they are going to confirm what I'm saying. Phil Mendelson, my community, with 24 years of experience in the council, 10 of them as chair. And I don't have time to list everything that he's done, but believe me, it's a long list. So I'm definitely supporting Phil. Okay, you don't give enough time, really.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. For those who don't know, just to reiterate what Ms. Gutierrez said, is a real pillar of our community and has enabled many thousands of immigrants to receive first-class education, and our community owes her a great debt of gratitude. So thank you, Ms. Gutierrez, for sharing your thoughts tonight.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Abel Lopez for Phil Mendelson, 1 minute. Abel Lopez, I see you there. You're on mute, sir.
First of all, thank you to the caucus for hosting this very democratic process and activity. It's activities that are needed around the country and in our communities more. So thank you for that. I fully endorse the re-election of Philip Mendelson. He has created places to live by working on affordable housing, as well as trying to ensure that our streets are safe for our communities, and creating a welcoming environment for immigrants to come to the District of Columbia where they can seek their fortune and their futures. For building on education initiatives that improve the paths for future success for our children, and also for creating a place where one can celebrate the diversity of cultures that exist within the community. Through this diverse culture and acknowledgement and recognition of who we are, where we come from, we're better empowered to perform civically and to engage in the democratic process that leads to a better nation. So thank you and please support Philip Mendelson.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez, for speaking. And that concludes our segment on the council chair race. So once again, thank you to the candidates and for all the speakers for that race. We are now going to move on to the council Ward 1 race, where we have 3 candidates. Salah, and I believe all 3 are in attendance, Salah Zapari, Sable Harris, and Brianna Doe. So once again, candidates will have the opportunity to speak for 90 seconds for their campaigns, followed by board members for 90 seconds and other speakers. Just a reminder, please keep comments focused on the benefits or why you love your campaign or why you are the best person to represent the Latino community. So we will begin with, in alphabetical order, Mr. Salazar.
Good evening and
90 seconds.
Thank you. Good evening and thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is Salah Sapari. I jumped into this race because there's a real anxiety about rising crime in our ward and our city. Before running, I worked at MPD as a police officer and then a member of headquarters staff, and I've seen firsthand the toll violence takes on our community. But my work was often at the intersection of what communities demanded and the department's realities and needs. So I know we can have a better police department, and I know we can innovate in public safety. Innovation, however, is not reducing the number of police officers and detectives by 250 and then not creating any alternative response mechanism to pick up the slack. We've been talking about innovating in public safety for 2 years. It's time we actually do it. As we face a nearly 2-decade spike in homicides, the tripling of carjackings over the past 3 years, unfortunately, those who bear the brunt of victimization are often minority communities. In the undocumented community, victims are often hesitant to report crimes for fear their immigration status may compromise the life they are building here. Furthermore, when they do report being a victim of a robbery or theft, because often they are not in the banking system, their losses are in the form of large amounts of cash that are very hard to recover. As your council member, I'll work tirelessly to build bridges between communities and law enforcement. I will reinforce the policy of our police department to never ask individuals about their immigration status and ensure we engage both public and private sector partners to ensure those who are undocumented are able to fully participate in our local economy and banking system so that financial losses are able to be recovered. You can learn more about my platform at slaw2022.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zapari. So we will next hear from Sable Harris.
Hi, thank you so much. I want to tell a story. Last fall, my Ongwai and Bangwai maternal grandparents and Vietnamese came into DC to visit me, but primarily to eat and shop at the Vietnamese stores and restaurants at Eden Center in Northern Virginia. My fiance asked after why they were so excited to go shopping at Eden Center, and I told him because they felt an immediate sense of belonging there. Hearing Vietnamese as the primary language, the familiar smells and sounds brought them back to their previous home in Saigon. My family came to the US as refugees with just $10 in their pockets in 1975, and they didn't become citizens until 8 years later. How many of those stories are similar here? The same sense of belonging they felt is what I want to bring to council. I will prioritize those of us who have been left behind, who weren't born here, speak a different language, working hourly jobs just to make rent. At a baseline and at the forefront, I will provide translations, inclusive meeting and hearing times, and plan to advocate and expand funding for excluded workers, raise the minimum wage to a livable wage, and will do more than just pass legislation for long-term residents to vote here in local elections. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Harris. The next speaker is incumbent Councilmember Brianne Nadeau.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Ward 1 Councilmember Brianne Nadeau. I'm so proud to represent the most diverse ward here in the District of Columbia, with a strong focus on housing, whether it's protecting our tenants or putting more than 1,200 units of affordable housing in the pipeline here in Ward 1, investing in our students and our schools, and ensuring that we have nearly $1.5 million a year invested in violence prevention here in the ward. I'm a proud introducer of the Voice Act with ranked choice voting, and also have worked incredibly hard throughout this pandemic to keep our families safe and to keep our schools open safely and keep our kids healthy. Representation matters. And one of the pledges that I made at council as a council member was that when a constituent called my office or stopped by or made a meeting, that they would see someone in our office that looked like them and that talked like them and represented them. Now, 4 out of 5 of my personal office staff are Latino, representing our population here in Ward 1. And I have made language access a priority for both my public events and my hearings. I have a strong track record with a focus on our immigrant community, whether it's introducing Local Voting Rights Act, decriminalizing street vending, expanding our public health benefit, the Alliance, and making it easier for residents to stay enrolled and get enrolled. And what I'm really most excited about in Ward 1 in terms of deliverables for our Latino community is that we will soon have Amigos Park open for all at the corner of Kenyon and Mount Pleasant, which has been a long sought after dream for many of our residents. Thank you. And I hope you'll support me tonight and on.
Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau. Thank you to all three candidates who spoke tonight for the Ward 1 council race. At this time, we will ask you to leave the call, or if you want to participate in subsequent proceedings, we can call you back after we finish discussion for Ward 1. At this time, please step out either to the waiting room or leave the call. Thank you so much. Okay, we're now going to move on to board members who are speaking. First for Mr. Zapari, Anthony Musa for 90 seconds.
There we go. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. Nice to talk to you again. So Ward 1 is incredibly blessed to have three wonderful candidates running for either re-election or election in Ward 1. However, I'm supporting my friend Salah for Ward 1 for several reasons. Number one, I believe that while public safety is one of the number one issue, either the number one or number two issue in terms of polling in DC, and we need someone who has the vision and insight to make sure that the money that we're putting into the public safety budget is utilized appropriately by MPD. We need someone who has the experience, which he does as a former MPD officer, to understand the intricacies of the department and ensuring that the department is accountable to the DC Council. While we can continue to, if public safety was measured by the amount of money we threw at a department, then DC should be the safest city in the world, but it isn't. So we need to ensure that we have someone with the insight and knowledge of the department to make a difference and put those dollars to work. And that's why I'm supporting Salah. And how much time do I have left?
20 seconds, Mr. Musa.
Oh, okay, 20 seconds left. So the other two things I'll mention is that as a member of the LGBT community, which he is and I am, it's incredibly important to have a member of the LGBT community on the council. And in addition, it's important to have a member of the community who represents not just, who also represents the Arab community. I'm half Arab, half Mexican. I think it's important to have someone on the council as well. And that's it for me in less than 20 seconds. Over.
Thank you, Mr. Musa, DC Latino Caucus board member. For Brianna Nadeau, I will actually be speaking next. I believe that the Latino Caucus absolutely must endorse Councilmember Brianna Nadeau for another term. During my time as president of this caucus, I have come to know Councilmember Nadeau as someone who keenly feels her responsibility to represent the traditional home of the Latino community in the neighborhoods of Ward 1. She reflects the weight of that responsibility consistently as confirmed by the legislation that she champions and supports. On affordable housing, she has voted to expand the Housing Production Trust Fund to create more affordable housing. She supports rent control and has been the council's main champion for using publicly owned land to increase deeply affordable housing for the members of our community that need it the most. She has advocated for using budget surplus funds to expand rental assistance programs. And on voting rights, she authored the most recent version of legislation that would extend the right to vote to legal permanent residents like green card holders in local elections, which would greatly impact and increase Latino voting power. On healthcare, Ms. Nadeau has led council efforts to reform DC's Healthcare Alliance, which provides health insurance to over 15,000 low-income immigrants, allowing them to recertify remotely and with less frequency and a lot less hassle than they had to in the past. I believe that Ms. Nadeau's door is always open to listening to the concerns of our community, which is aided by the fact that 4 or 5 staff members are either Latino or bilingual in English and Spanish. Ms. Nadeau has proven to be a powerful advocate for the needs of our community, and she deserves our endorsement for another term. Thank you. Okay, so the next speaker will be for, okay, the only remaining speakers are for Ms. Nadeau, for Councilmember Nadeau. So board member Luz Martinez, you have 90 seconds.
President, hi, it's me again, Luz Martinez. I previously served as Deputy Chief of Staff and Communications Director to Councilmember Brianna Nadeau, one of those staffers that people have been mentioning. Brianna has proven herself to be a champion for our community, introducing bills that President Joe Barrios just spoke about specifically to address our community needs, decriminalizing street vending, voting rights, establishing Amigos Park. You can look at her questionnaire and read all about her work. I want to speak to the investment in that Latino staff and how she has opened the door to Latino political power. She has more Latinos on her staff than the other council offices combined. And that is so important when people call the council and they have issues, that they can speak to someone who understands their issues, cultural competency, and can be there for them and their family and assist them. Former staffers have gone on to serve in agencies, nonprofits, boards. A lot of them are on the Latino Caucus board. They're invited to be on panels, commencement speakers at local high schools where kids can see themselves reflected in local government. And so this should not be overlooked because it's a very intentional choice by the council member. She recognizes the power and the strength of investing in people. And when given the opportunities and tools, we can do amazing things for our own community. So I'm very proud to be a part of her team. I urge you to support her and vote for her on June 21st.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. If you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute so we can keep the focus on the speakers. The next board member speaker, Ms. Patricia Eguino for Brianna Nadeau, 90 seconds.
Hi. As a former COVID-19 tester, former vaccination clinical worker, and a current vaccination research scientist for the FDA, I was shocked and dismayed when the mask mandate ended with only 1 day's notice. However, there was only one council member who had the guts to publicly speak out about this and introduced emergency legislation to prevent it. However, while she did not have the votes to pass this, I was inspired by Brianna Nadeau's will to do right. Also, support Councilmember Nadeau for her tireless support for the Latinos in the District of Columbia. Councilmember Nadeau introduced the Local Resident Voting Rights Amendment Act of 2021, which will allow residents, green card holders, to be able to vote in local elections. This will be a game changer for us Latinos, and it will increase our ability to exert our political power, as well as have a fair representation in our city. So, DC, pay attention. You cannot close your eyes and your ears to us Latinos any longer. You cannot pretend we don't exist. You cannot plead ignorance to our problems, because we are here and we are not going away. We are not alone. We will not stay quiet, and we will vote. Vote for Brianna Nadeau.
Ms. Eguino, thank you for Brianna Nadeau. That concludes the board member speakers. So we will move on to other assigned speakers, all of whom have signed up for Ms. Councilmember Nadeau, beginning with Mario Cristaldo, former DC Latino Caucus Vice President. Mr. Cristaldo, you have 1 minute to speak for Ms. Nadeau. Mr. Cristaldo, are you available? Okay, we'll move on to Mr. David Guerra. For Brianna Nadeau, 1 minute, please.
The best way to get to Mr. David J. Zach by car is via Maryland 97 North.
I apologize, my Google Assistant decided to act up.
I'm sorry. So, good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is David Guerra. I work at Latino Economic Development Center at the Housing Department. Today, I'm here to endorse the Councilmember Brianna Nadeau. In addition to the thoughts mentioned previously for the board, I want to point it out the Councilmember Nadeau is an honest, dedicated, and committed council member in the ward. Muy buenas noches, mi nombre es David Guerra, trabajo en el Centro Económico de Desarrollo Latino. Estoy aquí esta noche para apoyar la candidatura de la concejal Brianna Nadeau. Quiero señalar que es una persona honesta, dedicada y muy comprometida con los residentes de su distrito. Quiero compartir estas consideraciones en adición a las consideraciones antes mencionadas por nuestro presidente. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, señor Guerra. Okay, I believe that concludes the segment for the Ward 1 Council. So thank you once again to the candidates and to the speakers for that race. The Ward 3 Council is the next race up. This is an unusual race because Mary Shea, the incumbent, announced at the last minute she was not running again, which has set off quite a scramble. Despite that, the majority of the candidates did submit questionnaires. And so we are thankful for the thoughtful responses that came from the Ward 3 Council members. So the candidates who are running are Ben Bergman, Deidre Brown, Henry Cohen, Tricia Duncan, Bo Finley, Matthew Froman, Eric Golay, Monty Monash, and Phil Thomas. And I believe we have all the candidates present except for Mr. Cohen and Ms. Monash, or Mr. Monash, I apologize. So we will begin again with the candidates. Each candidate will have a chance to speak for 90 seconds. So we will begin with Mr. Ben Bergman.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Bergman. I'm an ANC commissioner here in Ward 3. I'm also the chair of ANC 3D. I'm also an attorney and a former elementary school teacher and a dad with 2 small kids at age 5 and 2. If you haven't gotten a chance, I'd urge you to take a look at my questionnaire responses. I tried to provide some thoughtful answers to what I think are some important questions, but to zoom out a little bit about and talk about why I'm running, I think it's essential that the leaders of the district focus on making this a city where everyone can thrive, where everyone can start a small business, where everyone can age in place, where everyone can raise a family. And right now, that's not the reality. If you just take housing and childcare, 2 issues that I've talked a lot about in this campaign, those things combined break so many families in the district, and we have to deal with that. But at the same time, I think these challenges that we have that we're going to have to be dealing with in the next term, they're significant, but there are also opportunities. We can reimagine downtown, we can invest in our schools, but the key is to have creative thinking on the council and having a council that's committed to strong oversight, to asking tough questions, to holding people accountable for their incompetence, to not looking the other way when a government official missteps, whether that's the mayor, a member of the council, or an agency head. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman, for addressing the caucus members tonight. Deirdre Brown. Ms. Deirdre Brown? Oh, yes.
Yes, I'm here. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Deirdre Brown. I'm running to be the next Ward 3 council member. I'm a member of the DC Latino Caucus. I'm a 3rd generation Washingtonian, and I earned my Juris Doctorate at UDC David A. Clark School of Law, where I provide legal services to underrepresented residents. I'm a former ANC commissioner. I own a title company. I'm a housing advocate, and I'm a parent of 3 daughters and 2 sons. The Latino community in Ward 3 is experiencing many of the same challenges felt by Latinos across the city: lack of affordable rental housing, lack of access to homeownership, lack of access to living wages, and lack of access to government. I believe in support, equity, and inclusion for all, and will implement policies that reflect this belief. I plan to engage the Latino community by building a relationship, building trust, by hosting listening sessions where I can hear what the concerns, needs, and interests are. When possible, literature and presentations will be in English and in Spanish. And as a small business owner, I have and continue to work with clients where English is not their first language. I will continue this commitment of inclusion as a council member and will hire Spanish-speaking staffers. I also think that it's important for many in our community that events and meetings are scheduled with working families in mind. So we will hold meetings and events in the evenings and on the weekends. I think it's important to have constituent service locations in Ward 3. I look forward to representing every resident of Ward 3, and I would like your support and endorsement as the next council member for Ward 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deirdre Brown. Ms. Tricia Duncan.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Tricia Duncan, and I'm also running for Ward 3 Council. I do not come to this campaign as a politician. I've never run for office, but as a community advocate. I'm a mom with 1 child in 8th grade at Hardy Middle School, and I have a high schooler at a public charter school. I started my community involvement at the elementary school where my kids attended. In May of 2017, when the Trump administration started separating families at the border, I organized protests every Friday for 16 weeks outside of the Department of Homeland Security, close to where I live. We wanted to keep the pressure on the administration to reunite those families. It was a profound experience for me in advocating for others. And needless to say, I am very pro-immigration. I then went on to serve as the president of the PTO, and then moved into the president's position of the Palisades Community Association, where I live now. It's an association of 1,800 members, and we do a lot of community advocacy. I'm a public school parent through and through. I see education as the great equalizer. Some quick policies that I support related to schools: increased ELL staffing where it's needed most, access to Spanish-speaking children to bilingual schools so Spanish-speaking parents can support their children's learning at home. And we absolutely need to do a better job of enforcing the DC Language Access Act. Thank you for your time, and thank you for inviting us to speak tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Mr. Bo Finley.
Thank you, President Barrios, and to the DC Latino Caucus for putting tonight's event together. My name is Bo Finley, and I'm running to represent Ward 3 on the DC Council. I'm an attorney, the chair of Advisory Neighborhood Commission 3C, and a union leader. I also represent Ward 3 to the DC Democratic State Committee, where I spoke out for ranked choice voting. I was born in DC, and I grew up attending Catholic school and church in Ward 3, and today I live in the Quebec House apartments in Cleveland Park with my wife, Laura. We have a city that is increasingly divided into the haves and the have-nots, where growth happens as displacement increases and our educational achievement gap widens. As housing affordability dwindles and transportation costs go up, some of us have to make tough decisions, including regarding our health care, whether to have children, and more. My campaign is based on appreciating our shared humanity and working toward a brighter future for all of us. I'm running because I believe housing is a human right. We need affordable housing, not just in Ward 3, but across the district. I want more housing at all levels and have fought hard for more affordable housing as an ANC. We need to look at expanding pathways to home ownership so that our children and grandchildren can afford to own homes where they've grown up. I am also running because I believe education is a human right. Latino students in DC face challenges due to the lack of representation with too few Latino teachers, insufficient resources for students who are learning English, and the supplementation of funds. This all contributes to an achievement gap that must be overcome. I invite you to join my campaign for a more inclusive, more just district so that we can work together toward a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finley. Mr. Matthew Fruman.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you for hosting this event. My name is Matthew Fruman, and I'm here to ask for your support. I've devoted years working with many of you to try to make the district a better, more welcoming, more supportive city for all of our residents. The list of issues I've worked on is long, from strengthening our schools to serving our seniors. One of my strengths is coalition building. I led in the creation of the Coalition for DC Public Schools and Communities, made up of the education councils from all 8 wards. As a coalition, we've made a real difference for the children in our city, and on the council, I would extend that difference and work hard for all of our students. I have a track record of getting difficult things done. I lead the Lisner Home on Western Avenue, a 5-star assisted living and nursing facility serving low-income DC seniors. Affordable housing matters to all of us. At Lisner, we recently secured the first ever Housing Production Trust Fund Award in Ward 3 to build 93 units of deeply affordable senior housing. We not only won that award, we worked with our neighbors and overcame what had been strong opposition and turned it into support. I believe no one has all of the answers or even knows all of the questions, and that we all do better when we work together and learn from each other. On the council, I pledge to work with and learn from you, as I did through your questionnaire, and I believe that I aligned with you on every one of your priorities, because together we can work together to achieve our shared goal of making the city the best it can possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fruman, for speaking with us. Mr. Eric Goulet.
Hi, good evening. I'd like to thank all the members of the Latino Caucus for inviting me to tonight's meeting. My name is Eric Goulet. I'm the father of 2 young sons in the Palisades neighborhood. I've served as a 19-year career in DC government, serving as the DC budget director and then the budget director for the council. During that time, I've been able to lead on a number of progressive issues that I'd like to talk about tonight. First, I've always been able to make sure our public and our public charter schools have been fully funded. As Ward 3 council member, I will ensure that we will make the dual language instruction, culturally relevant curriculums, and adult education programs available across the city. Additionally, I will work to ensure that the Birth to 3 for All DC Act, which I wrote as Committee on Health Director, is fully funded. Finally, I want to talk about some of the issues that are important here on the survey. As budget director, I wrote the law that dedicated 50% of our DC surpluses to the Housing Production Trust Fund. And we must work to make sure that that $500 million investment is used to expand workforce housing opportunities in the city. We must work to ensure that we have 4,000 police officers in our neighborhoods to be able to provide the same level of community policing that I led as DC budget director with our former chief, Kathy Lanier. Finally, as Committee on Health Director, I work closely with advocates and providers to eliminate the face-to-face recertification and worked with you for 5 years to get the DC Healthcare Alliance to be able to match the 1-year Medicaid timeline for re-enrollment. We did that this budget cycle, and we can now declare victory that the mayor's budget for fiscal year 23 eliminates these two onerous requirements for our DC Healthcare Alliance program. I've been proud to lead on this issue, and I ask for your endorsement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Golette, for speaking with us. Mr. Phil Thomas.
Thank you, DC Latino Caucus. My name is Phil Thomas, and I'm a grandson, brother, former Mundo Verde school teacher, and a husband. I've been involved in the city for over a decade, from a 2-term commissioner to now the chair or president of the Federation of Community Associations. I've also worked in the government by serving as a Ward 3 liaison for the mayor, who gave me an opportunity to serve in the community in which I live. I've also, when the time got tough during COVID, I was told to lead the COVID-19 Community Core, which improved vaccination rates, not just in Ward 1 between the Latinos, but also Latino community, but also in Wards 5, 7, and 8, where we doubled the number. Also have proven results by leading the Community Core and also being involved as the Mayor's Office of Community, the Mayor's Office of Clean City, where we worked with the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs to bring equity, environmental equity across the city. During that time, I'm a bridge builder. I listen to the community. I understand the issues across the city. I also worked with the Latino Caucus on the state committee as well. And I'm looking forward to earning your endorsement. And you guys can find out more information on my website at philforward3.com. I look forward to earning your endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other candidates for Ward 3 Council that have not spoken? Henry Cohen, Monte Monash? Okay. At this time, I want to thank the candidates who spoke in the Ward 3 Council race. We really appreciate your coming and making yourself known to Latino Caucus members. At this time, we are going to ask you to drop from the call so that we can continue with discussion. Thank you, and thank you again for coming. Okay, we have 2 individuals who have signed up to speak for the Ward 3 Council. They're both for Deidre Brown. There are no board members who are signed up to speak. So for 1 minute, Jennifer Blamer for Deidre Brown. Jennifer Blamer. Okay, Corina Garay for Deidre Brown. 1 minute.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Corina Garay. I am a DCLC member as well, and I would like to extend my support for Deidre Brown. A couple of reasons. She will, and she has committed to increasing the number of Latino teachers in the district. As we know, representation is extremely important. So this is something that I'm sure that we can all agree on would be amazing for our community. Second, she's going to help our Latino community with home ownership as a seasoned realtor. She has experience in this. She has done workshops on the weekends where she has assisted people in home ownership. But in this case, she will expand her efforts to the Latino community. Thirdly, I believe that as a woman of color, I'm sure that she understands the hardship that our community faces. The Latino community does share a lot of parallels with the Black community, and I strongly believe that she is better suited out of all the candidates to look out for our better interests.
Ms. Garay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. Your time has expired. Thank you. Ms. Jennifer Blamer. Okay, that concludes the discussion for the Ward 3 Council. We're now going to move to the hotly contested Ward 5 Council. This council race is of particular interest to the Latino Caucus. Number one, because the census numbers show that Ward 5 is now the third highest ward by Latino population. And we also have, as you're about to hear, several board members who are deeply involved in various campaigns. So at this time, I'm going to introduce the candidates and then we will give them a chance to speak. So the candidates for the Ward 5 Council are Gordon Fletcher, Faith Gibson Hubbard, Gary Johnson, Kathy Henderson, Art Lloyd, Vincent Orange, Zachary Parker, Lauren Rogers, and Ray West. I believe we have representatives from Gordon Fletcher, Faith. I believe the candidates, Mr. Fletcher, Ms. Hubbard, Mr. Orange, and Mr. Parker are in attendance. So we will be asking them to speak in that order. So we will begin with Gordon Fletcher for the Ward 5 Council. You have 90 seconds.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Gordon Fletcher, and I'm running to become the next Ward 5 DC Council member. As an immigrant, as a 20-year resident of District of Columbia, I understand the challenges, the various challenges that the Latino community faces, especially the Latino immigrant community in the District of Columbia. I welcome Latino leadership all throughout my campaign, and I've shown evidence of this by my campaign manager being Latino, my treasurer being Latino, and also many members and volunteers of my campaign being Latino as well. I understand I will include bilingual and Latino leadership all throughout my office as your next Ward 5 Council member. I will make sure that I advocate and I fight for rental assistance, for jobs, for health insurance access, for food insecurity within the communities as top priorities. I will make sure I advocate for increased language access across all city agencies. I'm an advocate. I'm a champion for all people, but especially those underserved communities, such as immigrant communities. I'll make sure that I advocate for all Latino residents, regardless of status, to ensure that the city meets their needs. I'm a bridge builder. I'm a 3-term ANC commissioner, a proud husband, a 2-term chairman of the Ward 5 Democrats. I foster relationships through community engagement, through inclusivity, all throughout my leadership and my service within Ward 5 and District of Columbia. I understand the importance of our diverse Latino community, and I know that you feel overlooked, and I'll be your advocate. Thank you so much, and vote for me.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Faith Gibson Hubbard.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having this opportunity for us to engage with your caucus tonight. My name is Faith Gibson Hubbard, and I am running to be the next Ward 5 Council member because I am a mother and a homeowner and a wife here in Ward 5, raising my children in a community that is diverse. And that diversity is beautiful, and it includes culture and language that I want to continue to work hard to fight to make sure that there is inclusivity in our government. And I don't just say that as someone who is now prepared to run for the council, but I've worked in public education in the district for well over a decade. And in my role as chief student advocate, it started even there around making sure that all families could be able to advocate well for their children through not only having translated materials for my office, but also making sure that language access was a priority. As the executive director of Thrive by 5, focusing with many of our community-based organizations and government partners to ensure that we were focused on maternal and infant health for our Latino community and all other communities that need to be included as well. And also making sure that our federal dollars and so much more that we were focused on during COVID-19 were primarily engaged within our Latino community as the director of the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs. So I know that there are a variety of issues that we are all dealing with, but there are ones around job access, small business supports, and so much more, navigation of our city services, voting rights that we know we have to fight for all of our neighbors. And that includes our growing Latino community in Ward 5. So I look forward to continuing my work, for us to work in coalition together to be able to fight for what our community deserves.
Thank you, Ms. Hubbard, for your comments. Moving on then to Vincent Orange, 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vincent Orange. I'm the former two-term council member for Ward 5, served 2 terms as the at-large council member, and was also the Democratic National Committee man. I'm pleased to say that the chairman of my campaign is Franklin Garcia. I have a record working with the Latino community. When I had oversight over the Office of Latino Affairs, I doubled the budget. Also had an opportunity to push language access and get a lot of the documents translated into Spanish. But more importantly, I worked with the Latino community to push the minimum wage, introduce the legislation to $15. We're now talking about pushing it to $22 per hour. You know, on the council, I would lead that effort. I led the effort to increase the living wage as well as unemployment benefits. But one key piece of legislation that I introduced and got passed was the wage theft legislation. I doubled the wages for the tip wage workers, but when the tip wage workers doesn't make the minimum amount, the owner is required to make up the difference. And we found that that was not taking place. Our Attorney General has used that legislation, the wage theft legislation, to make a lot of our workers whole. I've also had the opportunity to introduce legislation, pass legislation to protect women in the workplace. When I come back to the council, I'll be working to create jobs, minimum wage housing, as well as free tuition at the University of the District of Columbia for DC residents. I look forward to having and continuing a dialogue with the Latino community, and I look forward to working with you. I had an opportunity to travel to Cuba, El Salvador, and I see my time is up. So thank you very much. Vote for Vincent Orange. Vitamins.
Ms. Orange, thank you. Thank you for speaking with us tonight. Zachary Parker, 90 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. I am Zachary Parker. I am the current Ward 5 representative on our State Board of Education, where I have a track record of advocating for issues important to the Latino community, including increasing representation of Latinos in our educator workforce. I've worked alongside leading Latino educators like Art Mola and Dalia Aguilar and Eduardo Ferrer and Edgardo Guerrero to make sure we continue to fight for quality schools. I'm currently working to elect our first ever Latino member to the State Board of Education, and the list goes on. I'm running for Ward 5 Council to build healthy communities and to make sure that we fight for a Ward 5 that is possible, one that is inclusive and where all neighbors have their basic needs met. That's why I'm fighting for affordable housing through innovative means like community land trusts and making sure we address the root causes of violence. That's why I'm an advocate for paid family leave. I support ranked choice voting. That's why I support extending voting rights to more neighbors, and the list goes on. It is not unfair to say that the Ward 5 council race is arguably one of the most consequential elections this season. And DC Latino Caucus deserves a champion. Out of all of the candidates in the Ward 5 race, I'm the only current elected official with real and current budget and policy experience. I've amassed the greatest amount of grassroots support, which speaks to the work that I've been doing alongside the Latino community for years now. And I'm the only leading candidate not directly tied to corporate lobbyists or the establishment. More importantly, we need a council member that is going to fight for the issues that matter most to the Latino community, and that is me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker, for speaking with us tonight. Are there any other candidates in the Ward 5 race who have not yet spoken? Candidates? Okay, at this time, I want to thank the Ward 5 candidates. I know you must be very busy in this hotly contested race, and we really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us tonight. At this time, we're going to ask you to drop from the call so that we can have what I'm sure will be a very lively discussion on the Ward 5 race. So thank you again. If the candidates could now drop at this time. Okay, before we continue with the speakers, my understanding is that one of our members, Ms. Jennifer Blamer, is having some issues with unmuting herself. I'm not sure what the problem is because everybody all night has been unmuting themselves. So Ms. Blamer, if you're on, you may want to consider maybe joining with a different platform. I don't see you currently online. So we're doing the best we can, but maybe join with your phone or something else. But we have noted your concern, but I don't see you currently online to unmute you. And everybody's able to unmute themselves. If one of the other co-hosts can see Ms. Blamer, please send me a text so that we can allow her to speak at least for the Ward 3 race, because I know she's been running. She did win. Okay. All right. So we're going to begin discussion on the Ward 5 Council. So we have a number of speakers lined up. So we're going to begin with the board. Board members have 90 seconds. Again, a reminder to please keep your comments to the greatest extent focused on why your preferred candidate is the best candidate to represent the Latino community in Ward 5. So we're going to begin with Gordon Fletcher. Mr. Juan Ulloa, you have 90 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Juan Ulloa, Communications Chair and Board Member of the Caucus. I also have the privilege of serving as Gordon Fletcher's campaign manager. I'll be candid. Gordon Fletcher is a 3-term ANC commissioner. The one thing that sold me on working with him is that I've seen the results of his work. Gordon, as an ANC commissioner, has helped people keep their lights on, put food on their table. When they're in need, they can count on Gordon Fletcher. This is not hyperbole in the least. If you look at his work within the senior community, he's helped keep well over 100 senior citizens in affordable housing. He's an immigrant himself from Jamaica. He understands the challenges that our communities face as immigrants. He's not afraid of Latinos in leadership. I'm proof of it, as well as my colleague, Ruth Pagani, who serves as treasurer. He believes that we deserve access and input at all levels of government. With Gordon Fletcher, I guarantee you that you will get it. He is a man that holds fast to his convictions. He's man enough to admit when he is wrong. And when he doesn't know something, he seeks the right people around him to get the job done. Please consider endorsing Gordon. Learn more about him at gordonforward5.com. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ulloa, DC Latino Caucus board member, among many other hats that he wears. For Faith Gibson Hubbard, board member Margie Yeager. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to share why I think that Faith Gibson Hubbard is a great candidate for DC Council in Ward 5 and should earn the DCLC endorsement. I've known Faith for almost a decade through her public service roles in education and health. Faith has always had a strong commitment to serving the diverse populations in DC, including the Latino community. In her work at the Office of the Student Advocate, she was a champion for ensuring that materials were translated and all services were available in Spanish and other languages to ensure the greatest possible access and information for students, families, and educators who needed their support. In her work at Thrive by 5, which is focused on maternal and infant health, she ensured that her office focused on the particular needs of Latino maternal health issues, in addition to those facing the Black community, knowing that there's some overlap, but some distinct and important issues. In this role, she also advocated for the DC Alliance not requiring such frequent recertification to ensure ongoing access to healthcare and services. When she worked in the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, she worked hard to make sure that services continued during COVID with safety measures in place, knowing that resident needs peaked during this challenging time. I'm confident that Faith would be a champion for our community and would be a strong leader on housing, education, and healthcare, which are crucial issues for Latinos in DC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yeager, for Faith Gibson Hubbard. A quick note to Ms. Blimmer, I understand that you're on the phone. We're going to finish the Ward 5 discussion and we'll come back for your comments on the Ward 3 race. For the next speaker, it is Franklin Garcia on behalf of Vincent Orange. Sir, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for the record, let it be known that we have had a Latino on the school board. Mr. Victor Reynoso, I believe around 2007, was a member of that body. At any rate, I am very proud to endorse and support and be the chairman of Vincent Orange's campaign. Vincent Orange is the right person for the right time. He brought much of the economic development in Ward 5 to include Home Depot, which benefited much of our community, specifically the immigrant day laborers, as you know. He is huge on education, helped rebuild McKinley Tech, and as you heard, one of his signature legislation will be to get free tuition at UDC, our state university. Many of you may not know this, but the DC Latino Caucus was instrumental in bringing and ensuring that we have a version of the DREAM Act here in our future state. And he is committed to ensuring that all people who are DC residents have free tuition at our state university. He was instrumental in bringing affordable housing to Ward 5, which benefited Latinos. As you all heard, Ward 5 is one of the fastest growing hubs for Latinos, and Vincent Orange is responsible for much of that. So overall, I believe that Vincent Orange is the right person for the right time. His legislative experience is exactly what we need at this time. I am very honored to be the chairman of his campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Next for Zachary Parker, I will be speaking for Mr. Parker. I deeply respect and I am so proud of my board colleagues who are playing these amazing leading roles in other Ward 5 campaigns. But as a 13-year resident of Ward 5, I believe that Zachary Parker is the clear best choice for leading what is now DC's third largest ward by Latino population. Zachary is the only candidate in the race that provides a clear vision on what he would do to benefit the Latino community, as demonstrated in the 20 pages of answers that he provided in his questionnaire, as well as the many details on his website. He supports building more affordable housing for our community members, earning 30% or less of the area's median family income. He supports rent control, supports voting rights for legal permanent residents that would expand Latino voting power, which is very important to us. Ward 5 and its Latino community are at the crossroads of many challenges, from resident displacement to excessive industrialization and pollution, to stark differences between the rich and the poor and lack of housing. Ward 5 needs a candidate that can bridge differences across the many communities that call Ward 5 home, from newer white residents to longtime Black residents to the emerging Latino community. Zachary is the only candidate who has proven he can do that, having won a competitive ward-wide race for the Board of Education with voters from all across the ward. And Zachary has demonstrated the integrity and the ability to work across communities that Ward 5 needs. I urge the Latino Caucus members to vote to endorse Zachary Parker.
Mr. Barrios.
Thank you. All right. Next is Ms. Ruth Pagani for Gordon Fletcher. 90 seconds.
Mute. Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I wanted to let everybody know that I support Gordon Fletcher, but I also wanted to tell you why I think you should as well. I met Gordon as Ward 5 chair, and I have to say that he has to be one of the hardest working candidates I've ever met. And I know that he'll work very hard for the Ward 5 community and the city at large. He's an immigrant and understands the issues that many of us face as newcomers to the city and to the country. He's a wonderful son and husband, and he is totally committed to the well-being and safety of our Ward 5 community, Latinos, whites, Blacks, Asians. And for example, he's been a strong advocate of affordable housing. He has worked tirelessly to alleviate food insecurity. He's worked very hard on making sure that we have better transportation safety. And finally, I have to say that he is totally honest and forthright. He is absolutely committed to public service and believes in it 100%. I believe he would be a fabulous member of the City Council, and I urge our DC Latino Caucus members to endorse Gordon Fletcher as our next Ward 5 council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pagani, a longtime DC Latino Caucus board members and who also wears many hats in DC. That is the end of the board speakers segment for the Ward 5 race. We'll now move to additional speakers who are entirely distributed between Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Parker. So we will begin for Gordon Fletcher with John Green. You have 1 minute, sir. John Green. Okay, for Mr. Zachary Parker, Edgardo Guerrero.
Hola, buenas
1 minute.
noches. Hola, soy Edgardo y aquí con mi esposo Pedro. Nosotros somos residentes de Ward 5. We have been residents of Ward 5 for over 15 years. Yo soy un school librarian que trabajó en McKinley y ahora trabajo en Brooklyn Middle School. They're both in Ward 5. I just want to say I met and supported Zachary Parker since 2018, where he first ran for the School Board of Education, for the State Board of Education. And now when he joined, or he wanted to run as a council member, we said, like, yes, we're going to support you. And it shows that he has gained all this community support in all this time. He leads in financial contributions by Ward 5 residents. I'm part of a very diverse and energetic volunteer team that we go out and talk to our neighbors and talk about his candidacy and what he can do for our ward. His candidacy has also obtained endorsement of different organized interest groups, like groups that their goals are to work for.
Mr. Herrera?
Yes. Okay. I just want to say that Zachary he works in the
Joe, you're muted.
You're muted, Joe.
You're muted.
Thank you. I apologize for that. Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. So the next speaker is Ms. Brittany Fletcher for Gordon Fletcher.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Shackelford. Brittany won't be speaking, so I'll be taking her place today. I'm Gordon's campaign chair, and just coming to echo the sentiments that have already been relayed about Gordon and his candidacy and why I think he should earn your support. Just want to come and speak to, I've known Gordon for over 20 years and his longtime advocacy in DC, as serving as a commissioner for many years and serving as chair of the Ward 5 Democrats. Also, just want to reflect the sentiments that Gordon has a commitment not only to the community, but to diversity, as reflected in those that he's chosen to help run his campaign, including myself as an African-American woman and 2 Latino members that you've heard from today. And this is important because not only does Gordon respect the diversity of thought, diversity of background, but also diversity of culture that all of these members bring to his campaign that will ultimately reflect the sentiments of Ward 5 residents. You've heard others speak about his commitment to affordable housing, jobs, health insurance, and food insecurity, which is extremely important to the diverse community that we have here.
Your time is expired.
Please support Gordon's candidacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fletcher. For Zachary Parker, Ricardo Villalba.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Villalba. I'm a proud resident in Ward 5, Ivy City. I'm also a business owner, also hitting our Ivy City at the former BET building. And I'm a father of an 11-year-old girl attending Mary Reed Elementary School. I strongly support Mr. Zachary Parker, especially because I have a daughter that goes to school across town from me. I got to drive every morning across town. I believe in what he's working on in making a school better. I would rather have my daughter go to school near me, but because I don't have really good school in my area, I have to drive across town. I like what he has been doing as a president of the Board of Education. I like his energy. He has worked very hard early in this campaign. He has done a lot. He has raised a lot of money for his campaign because he's out in the community talking to people. And that's what I like about him. And I think everyone should support him. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Villalba. Maria Gomez for Gordon Fletcher. 1 minute.
Thank you to all the members of the caucus. I have had the privilege to work with Mr. Fletcher. He is definitely an honest and a hard worker and an extraordinary listener and a strategic thinker. For years, I've worked with him at American University And he has been an advocate for equity on issues such as rental assistance, jobs, health access, food security, and education. I know that Mr. Fletcher will advocate for increased language access across all city agencies that is very much needed, regardless of our documentation status. And as a 3-term ANC commissioner, he has been a bridge builder, fostering communication and inclusivity, something that is extremely important as a city council member. No other candidate has had this many Latinos on his campaign, and he has promised to hire a significant number of Latinos on his staff if he is elected. It is a privilege to endorse Mr. Gordon Fletcher as an immigrant again of Jamaica, a 20-year resident of the District of Columbia, and a devoted advocate in Ward 5. He is one of our own, not a recent implant, and he is someone who knows the plight of all Ward 5 residents. Por favor, les pido que apoyen a Mr. Fletcher. Muchas gracias.
Gomez.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Debbie Steiner for Zachary Parker. Debbie Steiner?
Yes, hi, I'm here. How you doing?
Hi, Ms. Steiner.
Okay, good evening. My name is Debbie Steiner, past president of Edgewood Civic Association, 3 terms, 16-year term ANC, as well as a board member of the Edgewood livability study that Mr. Barnes and I had worked on. At this particular time, with our city being what it is, we need a leader who knows exactly how to pinpoint issues, resolve issues, and have individuals come together. Mr. Parker's Healthy Ward 5 slogan is just not words. He has been putting in place right now as we speak.
Ms. Steiner?
Yes.
Time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steiner. For Gordon Fletcher, Mario Cristaldo. Mario Cristaldo, former vice president. For Zachary Parker, Brianna McGowan, 1 minute.
Good evening. I'm Bree. I'm a Ward 5 resident in Edgewood. I know Zachary as a thoughtful leader with integrity who has put in the work to fight for meaningful change. He has signed up over 100 seniors who didn't have technology or access to get signed up for Stay DC so they could stay in their homes. He led a COVID vaccine outreach and education by knocking on over 3,000 doors this past summer with volunteers, and he knows how to build a coalition and get things done. He believes in giving people more choice and fair representation by supporting ranked choice voting, which will give Latinos more voting power. He founded the Ward 5 Education Equity Committee to advocate for students and teachers, and he has created policy as representative on the State Board of Education. To me, supporting and representing the Latino community is about so much more than just hearing or seeing us in a performative way. It's about having concrete policy chops to improve lives, the experience to fight and win, funding for resources in our communities, and the courage to fight for equity and the backbone to shift power in our city and go toe-to-toe with the status quo. He's our only hope who is going to be able to stand up to powerful interests and be truly independent.
McGowan, your time is expired.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. And that concludes the speakers for the Ward 5 council race. So again, a thank you to the candidates and to all the speakers that we heard from. As you can see, there are very strong passions for the different candidates in Ward 5. Okay, so Ms. Bleemer was on the phone, but she appears to have dropped. So it appears that it may not work out for her this evening. We'll keep trying, but we're going to move on to the Ward 6 council race. That is Charles Allen. And I do not believe we have a representative from the Charles Allen campaign. So we will move to board members, and I will be speaking for Councilmember Allen for 90 seconds or less. It will not be 90 seconds. Councilmember Allen is running for re-election in a race that is unopposed even by Republicans. Despite that fact, he still took the time to provide a thoughtful response to our Latino issues questionnaire. He also reached out to me today, letting me know that he was not able to attend because of a conflict, but that it was still important to him to obtain the endorsement of our caucus if we decide to vote for him. I believe that Councilmember Allen is another important ally of the Latino community on the council, voting the right way on many of the issues you've heard about already tonight. He deserves our endorsement for another term on the council. Thank you. Moving on to the next person signed up also. This is also for Mr. Allen. 1 minute, Ted Loza.
Thank you again. As stated before, I am the former founder. I'm the founder of the DC Latino PAC, which gave the foundation to this organization, past and present and future leaders of the DC Latino Caucus. And I'm very proud to see all the different leadership that has come out of it. I have the pleasure to have served in the DC Council alongside Charles Allen, formerly as who was a staffer for in the Ward 6 Council. Also, I served with Phil Mendelson, by the way, and I've seen his great work and leadership, and he's doing a wonderful job in Ward 6, evidenced by the fact that he has no challenger. I encourage the Latino community, minorities, and district residents throughout to please elect him and give him another term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loza. Mr. Mario Cristaldo for Mr. Allen, Councilmember Allen, 1 minute. It appears that Mr. Cristaldo is not with us this evening. Okay, that concludes the Ward 6 Council. We're now going to move to the at-large council race, which is, we also have a lot of candidates who are here tonight. The candidates are Anita Bonds, Sharice Crawford, Nate Fleming, Lisa Gore, Laniqua Dominique Jenkins, Jimmy Jenkins, Ambrose Lane, Bradley Thomas, Paul Trantham, and Dexter Williams. And I believe we have all the candidates except for Mr. Lane and Mr. Trantham. So we will begin with Councilmember Bonds, who is the incumbent. Ms. Bonds, thank you for joining us, and you have 90 seconds.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone, and especially to the members of the DC Latino Caucus that represents 10% of the district's population today. And I think that's very important for all of us to grasp. I'm trustworthy, dependable, transparent, accessible, innovative, accountable, and loyal to the citizens of the District of Columbia, and that's all of the citizens. My work on the council has benefited hardworking residents and families, seniors, small businesses, and community nonprofits through financial and regulatory process that builds strong and lasting communities and neighborhoods for both our tenants and our homeowners. I grew up in Ward 7, DC, raised my family here, and I'm the former 4-term ANC chairperson and 12 years served as the chairperson of the DC Democratic Committee. I'm in my 2nd term at the council, and during my tenure, I've always had Latino staffers. So I want everyone to be clear on that. My work has included diversity and equity as the focus of my legislation and my constituent services work on the council. I work towards programs that ensure that all of us have a home in the District of Columbia and that the resources for success are there for all of us so that we all can build a bright future.
Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds, for joining us this evening. Sharice Crawford, 90 seconds. Ms. Sharice Crawford. I did want to note, thank you for the reminder, Ms. Barahona, that we have now changed timekeepers to give Ms. Gomez a break. Thank you, Ms. Gomez, for your excellent timekeeping. So from this point forward, Ms. Barahona is going to be providing the timekeeping. Okay, so Ms. Sharice Crawford, not present. Mr. Nate.
Charlie.
If you are not speaking, please put yourself on mute, Ms. Nunez. Thank you. Mr. Nate Fleming.
Good evening. Thank you to the DC Latino Caucus for holding this event. It's very informative. Thank you to the leadership. And thank you for supporting me in the past. The DC Latino Caucus endorsed my campaign when I ran for DC statehood representative and won in 2013. I served from 2013 to 2015. And for the past 5 years, I've been working at the council, most recently as director of the Committee on Recreation, Library, and Youth Affairs. So one of the agencies that the committee has oversight over is the Office of Latino Affairs. So I think I'll speak just directly. I think I'm the candidate that can best represent the Latino community because I've delivered for the Latino community. I work to increase the budget. The main role of my role as the director is the budget of the agencies, particularly the Immigrant Legal Services Program, pushing back when Trump was hostile towards the immigrant community. Also, I'm proud of my work in expanding cash assistance in the COVID-19 for excluded and undocumented workers. My platform for the Latino community is one, I want to fund the Alliance. I'm surprised that no one talked about thus far the DC Alliance and making it easier to recertify. That's a bill we've passed at the council, but we haven't funded it. So a lot of candidates aren't as savvy in terms of how the council works to make these things happen. I also want to expand support for Latino entrepreneurs. And I also want to work to increase support for the Community Impact Fund directly for the Latino community. In terms of
Mr. Fleming, Fleming, your time is up.
Thank you, and I appreciate the support of the DC Latino Caucus.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. Ms. Lisa Gore.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Gore. I'm a 30-year resident of DC. I've lived in wards 1 and 5, and I currently live in Hawthorne in a section of Ward 4. I'm a vice chair currently of ANC 34G, and I love DC. It's where I've made my home. Professionally, I've spent the last 25 years as a federal special agent overseeing federal housing programs and investigations. So I'm very uniquely situated to deal with the current crisis that's facing most Latino families and families in DC, which is housing. I've had direct oversight of major housing issues, including affordable housing, fighting for residents for decent, safe, and sanitary public housing, and I will continue to do that as council member. But this is my values. I'm no stranger to working with DC's Latino community. I started out as a bilingual probation officer here in DC in 1992 for about 5 years, working with families in the juvenile justice system. One of the things I fought for is language access. When my kids didn't have mental health providers, I personally went out to recruit that person. That was one of the first in the district in terms of supervision and providing mental health services in Spanish. I'm happy to hear Maria Tequeva's name because I know her from a while ago, working with those issues with the families. I've also lived in Puerto Rico for 3 years, worked with families in Puerto Rico recovering from hurricanes Irma and Maria. I have family from Ponce, Puerto Rico, and I've been a vocal supporter of the Voice Act. So I think my lived values, my experience and skills and oversight will make me very suited for your vote and support, hopefully, for my team and my candidacy for DC Council at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gore, for speaking with us this evening. Ms. Laniqua Dominique Jenkins.
Good evening, everyone. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? My environment is incredibly loud. It's festive. My name is Laniqua Dominique, and like most of you on this call, you have a multiple identity. Mine is a super aunt. I'm the aunt of 8 little beautiful scholars, the youngest I'm holding and putting to bed. I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm a former elected official. I've worked on Capitol Hill, and I have a deep, deep history of not just working and getting things done in the District of Columbia, but working and getting things done internationally in places like Africa, India, Spain, Finland. I want to reimagine the way things get done in the District of Columbia in a people-centered and a people-focused way. I'm also a preschool teacher, teaching little scholars east of the river foundational Spanish skills. I'm proficient in several languages. And one of the observations that I made while working in DC public education system is that we don't have a lot of Latino representation. As your next at-large council member, I'll definitely be vocal and instrumental in creating greater representation to recruit and retain my Latino brothers and sisters, and also creating affordable pipelines to education to get into the education sector. Additionally, I live in a multi-generational family. I live with my mother, my father, three nieces, nephews, and my mother. So affordable housing can sustain communal living. Thank you. And learn more about me at jenkinsfordc.com.
Thank you. I believe that our vice president's computer crashed, and so we were having a couple of issues, but Ms. Barone, are you back for time?
I am sorry about that.
No problem at all. Okay, moving on, Mr. Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, and buenas noches, everyone. I'm Bradley Thomas. I am a fourth-generation native Washingtonian. I've lived in 5 of the city's 8 wards over the course of my life, and I'm an attorney and member of the DC Bar since 1982. I am married. I've been married for 37 years to a recently retired DC public school teacher. We have 2 successful adult children. I've been an advisory neighborhood commissioner for 10 of the last 12 years, and for the last 6 years, I've chaired ANC 5E. Now, you can find a lot about my positions if you look at my website, which is votebradleythomas.com. You'll see that my core values are people, principles, and progress. I believe in the right of the people to be safe, secure, healthy, and heard by their representatives. I believe that the leaders should stand and, most importantly, act on principles that are unwavering and not for sale at any price. And I believe that progress means striving every day for equity in education, employment, housing, public safety, and environmental justice. Now, specifically with regard to the Latino community, 3 of my priorities, I believe, are voting rights, the cultural capacity to deliver services to people where they are, and language access and support. Now, I'm particularly concerned about voting rights. In the wake of the George Floyd killing of a couple of years ago, my daughter and I attended some of the Black Lives Matter rallies, and we realized that to make this movement successful, we need to do something permanent. So we got involved in voter registration and personally registered over 200 people, new voters. So we think that I believe that's very, very important. And when you think about the fact that if students attending college can
Mr.
vote,
Bradley Thomas,
yes.
Your time is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate your support. VoteBradleyThomas.com.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thomas, for joining us this evening.
You're welcome.
Mr. Dexter Williams.
Thank you. I want to thank the DC Latino Caucus for hosting tonight's meeting. I am Dexter Williams, a native Washingtonian from Ward 7. My mother is a retired DC public schools teacher, and my dad is a retired corrections officer from the DC Department of Corrections. I am the Ward 7 Democratic State Committeeman and served as a legislative staffer for the DC Council. I played a key role in passing the Restore the Vote bill and creating the DC Fair Elections program, which will expand opportunities for Latinos to seek elected office in the city. As council member, my priorities are to reimagine and enhance our entire educational system, provide deeply affordable housing, and protect our communities. Every bill that I draft, every initiative that I push, the Latino community will not just have a seat at the table, but you will be a partner to ensure that we have language accessibility across our district agencies, support our Latino youth, increase access to health insurance, support more Latino entrepreneurship, and access to capital. I will also bring back the agency report card to ensure that our DC agencies are hiring, training, retaining, and supporting Latinos. This is why I have Latinos on my campaign team in senior level positions, advising me on policies, issues within the Latino community, and campaign strategy. And I will do the same when I'm elected as council member. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And I look forward to continuing a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Are there any other candidates or a member of their campaign, a singer for Mr. Ambrose Lane or Jimmy Jenkins or Paul Trantham? Okay, thank you. I want to thank the candidates in the at-large council race again for joining us. At this time, we are going to ask you to drop, or you can go into a waiting room so that we can have a discussion on the at-large race. So thank you very much for spending some time with the Latino Caucus tonight. You can, if you can drop now. Thank you so much. Mr. Williams, if you could also drop, thank you. Okay. All right, we are going to first go to board members. We have two signed up. They're both for Mr. Dexter Williams. We will begin with Luz Martinez for 90 seconds. Ms. Martinez? Okay. Margie Yeager for Mr. Dexter Williams.
Thank you. I'm happy to share why I think that Dexter Williams is a great candidate for DC Council at large and should earn the DCLC endorsement. Mr. Williams is a native Washingtonian who spent his life working to make the city a better place for everyone. He worked for at-large Councilmember Robert White on legislation that created jobs, expanded voting rights, and improved the environment. He's truly committed to addressing the issues the Latino community faces every day. As he mentioned, he has Latino community members on his campaign teams in senior roles, advising him and directing him on campaign strategy. I've had the opportunity to have conversations with him about the issues the Latino community faces, particularly around education. One of his main priorities is to introduce legislation that will increase the number of Latino teachers so that Latino students can have more teachers that can relate to them. He's also committed to improving language accessibility, an issue we all know is a barrier for our community. He's already proven this commitment by having his website professionally translated into Spanish. He also wants to increase the number of Latino employees in DC government, as he discussed, by identifying the barriers and developing a plan to diversify personnel. I believe Dexter Williams will be a strong champion for our community, and I encourage you to support his candidacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yeager. Is Luz Martinez on the call? Okay, I'm not seeing her. We may come back to her if she comes back. All right, moving on to other speakers. For Anita Bonds, Ms. Sylvia Martinez, past president of the DC Latino Caucus. 1 minute, Ms. Martinez. Sylvia Martinez. Okay. Mr. Martin Fernandez for Lisa Gore. 1 minute, sir.
Hola, colegas. Martin here. I previously ran for the Ward 2 seat a couple years ago, and I've been working with Lisa since the beginning of her campaign, along with Evelyn Hernandez, who serves as her treasurer. So Lisa also has some Latino members of her staff. We worked closely with her actually to translate her web and print materials to Spanish as well, and language access has been a central part of her campaign. I'm going to talk a little more about her policy since she spoke about her lived experiences. 70% of Latino residents in DC are renters, and 50% of them are suffering from what's called rent burden, meaning they spent more than 30% of their income on rent. Lisa is an expert on housing policy. It's a rare thing that we have someone running that has implemented policy across the country on housing to the extent that Lisa has. And coincidentally, the current council member sits at the head of the housing committee and has fallen way short in reforming rent control and implementing other measures to preserve affordable housing in our city. So
Mr.
I see housing as a...
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Ms. Yilin Z for Dexter Williams. 1 minute.
Hi there, Jose. That's actually a mistake that I'm not supposed to be on the list.
Okay.
Yep.
No problem.
Thank you.
If you're yielding back the time, I'm sure nobody will complain.
Can I speak on behalf of Dexter Williams?
Yes. I would like
no.
to pass to Ricardo if possible.
No, that is out of order at this time. We have long established the speaker list, and there have been other requests which I have also turned down. So I need to be even-handed. I apologize for that. Okay, so at this time, that ends the at-large council discussion. So there has been a member, Ms. Jennifer Bleemer, DC Latino Caucus member, who has been waiting very patiently and has been having a lot of computer issues. So we are going to give her the floor at this time for 1 minute to talk about Ms. Deirdre Brown in the Ward 3 race. So Ms. Bleemer, thank you for your patience.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got off a train, so I wanted to make sure that I could participate. So thank you so much for giving me your patience, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment and urge the caucus to endorse Deirdre Brown for the Ward 3 council member seat. I met Deirdre when we were in law school and she had already raised her 4 children. She had started law school, left, and wanted to come back and finish the work that she started, because that's the kind of person that Deirdre is. She's a committed individual who sees the task and keeps on going until it gets done. When we started this race, she said, I don't want to just go to the places where people, normally go, like Palisades, or I want to go everywhere across Ward 3 so that people can understand that I'm here to represent everybody, not just the people who come out to vote. One of the things that we've learned is that people really want someone who can speak to their issues, whether they're in the Palisades, whether they're in Cathedral Commons, whether they're at Van Ness. There are a lot of issues happening across Ward 3, and we need to see people who are actively moving that forward, and not just for the vocal minority, but for the people who are working hard behind the scenes.
Ms. Bleemer, your time is up.
All right, thank you so much, and I urge you all to endorse Deirdre Brown for Ward 3 Council.
Thank you, Ms. Bleemer. Is Mr. Villalba still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we're going to look up the original list. It's possible that we may not have added you when you originally signed up, and if you signed up at that time, we will allow you to speak. But just hang in there while we take a look at that. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, moving on to the Attorney General race. In the Attorney General race, we have 4 candidates, all 4 of whom have signed up to speak tonight. Ryan Jones, Kenya McDuffie, Brian Schwalb, and Bruce Spiva. So we will begin with Mr. Ryan Jones. Mr. Jones, you have 90 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. I want to send a round of applause to everyone, all of my colleagues and running mates for their Herculean effort turning into petitions. You learn a lot in this process, and I just want to applaud everyone for their efforts and the decision to run. I recognize that Washington, D.C. has an important role in what we do in the nation, and the Attorney General has an incredible role in what we do in protecting the rights of everybody, no matter where they're race is, where they're from, their place of origin, and you need a person who has the lens. After you recognize that we probably all have the skill set and requisite talent to advocate zealously on behalf of the District of Columbia and its residents, you need to have someone who has the moral compass, and that's who I am. I'm the guy that stepped out here with the fearlessness and wanting everyone to know that I will protect you and your rights in the face of an extraordinary time of great disparity and a schism growing in the country in a myriad of areas. And I know that I will stand up for you, for this community. And I've been in the courts fighting against laws that have a desperate impact on Black and brown communities. I've had these fights in courts representing contractors, people who have helped me in my life. So I would like to take this opportunity to ask you to vote for me, look at my platform, recognize that I do have the skill set and the desire to ensure that you are protected in wherever you go in this world and have the chance to live a happy
Mr. Jones, your time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, for joining us and sharing your comments this evening. Mr. Kenyon McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the members of the DC Latino Caucus. I represent Ward 5 on the council, and throughout my council tenure, I prioritize diversity, racial equity, and economic opportunity, and have prioritized support for issues impacting the Latino community. I've supported every measure that strengthens and protects immigrants' rights, including authoring and funding the Expanding Access to Justice Act that funds civil legal services, including representation of immigrants. As your next Attorney General, I'll defend the district's status as a sanctuary city. I've led the council on empowerment of small business and workers' issues, especially during the pandemic. Many Latinos in the district work in the hospitality industry and for small businesses. My leadership and legislation has put small local businesses on a level playing field and allows them to compete for city contracts that previously were nearly impossible to win. I've consistently worked to fund programs for excluded workers and for Latino-owned small businesses. I'm running for Attorney General to ensure justice, opportunity, and equity for every resident of our city, especially our most vulnerable. I'm a coalition builder and an attorney for the people, and I've dedicated my career to public service. We're running a people power campaign, and as your next Attorney General, I will be the people's lawyer. When we kicked off our campaign for Attorney General, at the outset, we hired 3 vendors, 2 of which were Latino-owned small businesses. I do not talk the talk, I walk the walk, and as your next Attorney General, just as I have as a council member, I will walk with you. Thank you, and I humbly ask for your support and endorsement.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie, for coming and chatting with us tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Brian Schwab.
Good evening. My name is Brian Schwab. My father taught me a lot of valuable lessons in my life. One was that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We need to listen twice as much as we talk. I've been putting that lesson to work every day as a husband, as a father of 3 daughters, and as a lawyer who for the last nearly 30 years has been fighting for clients every day in the active practice of law. I've handled cases involving billions of dollars, as well as fighting to get a man off of death row in Alabama. No matter what the case is, listening is critical, and understanding and listening to what the client's needs are essential to make sure that the client's interests are advanced by the law. And that's what I'm going to do as your next Attorney General. It's the DC Attorney General's job to fight for the public interest, whether it's fighting against slumlords who take advantage of renters, or scam artists who take advantage of vulnerable people like our seniors, or employers who steal wages from their employees. All of that is in the public interest, and all of that is the job of the Attorney General to fight against. I plan to build on the work that our current Attorney General, Carl Racine, has done. Attorney General Racine knows better than anyone the kind of skill set and leadership and toughness it takes to do this job, and I'm humbled that Attorney General Racine has endorsed me in my campaign, just as the prior Attorney General, Irv Nathan, has. As your next Attorney General, I'm going to assure that the Attorney General's office is in communities, listening to people in the city.
Mr.
All
Schwab,
residents.
your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab, for chatting with us tonight. Mr. Bruce Spiva.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Spiva, and for nearly 30 years, the District of Columbia has been my home. My wife, Anna, and I have raised our 2 sons here. My wife is an immigrant herself. She came to this country when she was 13 years old in 1980. We love this city, and I want to work to continue to make it better, especially for those who for too long have been left out and left behind. If you want to know what I'll do as the next Attorney General, look at what I have been doing for the last nearly 30 years. I've spent 30 years fighting for everyday people, including specifically Latinx folks in areas of housing discrimination, voting rights, immigrants' rights, workers' rights, and DC statehood. I've taken on the tough fights as a civil rights lawyer and delivered. I fought slumlords and the district government itself, who kicked out Latino and Asian and Black residents of Columbia Heights to make way for high-end condos. These folks were riding around on city buses with children looking for a place to stay, and we achieved some justice. We achieved justice for those families in the form of damages. I've stood with the Dreamers' right to stay in this country, the only country that they've ever known. And I filed a brief on behalf of an alliance of university presidents in the United States Supreme Court to support that cause. I have fought for voting rights
Mr.
for minority folks,
Spiva, your time is up.
Latino folks all across this country, including
Your time
representatives
is up, sir.
in Iowa. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote, and thank you for your time tonight.
Mr. Spiva, thank you, and I do apologize for having mispronounced your name.
No worries at all. No worries at all.
All right, that I believe are all 4 of the candidates. We really, on behalf of the caucus, thank you for coming to speak with us. I know that what the Attorney General does is of great interest to the Latino community. So thank you for spending some time addressing that with us. And at this time, we're going to ask you to drop from the call so we can continue our discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. Have a good night.
Councilmember, good night.
Thank you.
All right, we have No board members signed up to speak on the Attorney General race, so we're going to move on to other speakers, beginning with Mr. Ricardo Villalba for Kenyon McDuffie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for another opportunity to speak. Like I said before, I'm a business owner and a resident here in Ward 5. I'm very happy and proud to support Kenyon McDuffie. I met him a few years ago on a trip in which Washington, D.C. became the sister city with San Salvador. I had the pleasure of spending time with him, talking to him, meeting his wife. He's a family man, and he has worked very hard in the city and has been able to be the type of politician that has worked with different politics to pass really good policies for our city. I believe that he is the best candidate for Attorney General for our city in fighting, in advocating for equity for our community, for the Black community, for the Latino community, and bringing justice to our city and dealing with also the crime that's happening in the city. I think the Latino Caucus should support him 100% like I do, and his record speaks for himself. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Villalba. For Brian Schwab, Ted Losa.
Thank you again. Besides, as I've mentioned before, standing at the foundation of this very platform to give candidates a chance to speak before our community, I just want to say that I was also a chief of staff in the city council serving under Councilmember Jim Graham. And as someone who has had his runnings with the law, I understand also being as an advocate, that housing with justice, healthcare, education, jobs with fair pay, the foundation of every sustainable society. Equity is at the base of all this. We need an independent thinker, a chief advocate for our community, specifically for Blacks and Browns who need him the most. I believe that leadership and someone who can work independently from the other government, government entities that compose our city, that person is Brian Schwab. I strongly endorse him. I think he is the candidate to lead us as the next AG for the District of Columbia. Thank you.
Mr. Losa, thank you for speaking. Next up for Kenyon McDuffie, Maria Patricia Corrales.
Muchísimas gracias. Kenyon McDuffie is a native Washingtonian who understands the importance of having representation in our city. Kenyon is a friend of the Latino community and a champion for diversity and inclusion. Kenyon's leadership on the council has led to transformative legislation that ensures Latino have a seat at the table. As a business owner, Kenyon has always showed up for the Latino and women-owned businesses. Kenyon McDuffie's lifetime commitment to public service and his community-centered approach to leadership is why I am urging you to support Kenyon McDuffie as our next Attorney General. Thank you so much.
Thank you for speaking, Ms. Corrales. The next speaker is for Brian Schwab, Debbie Steiner.
Good evening again. I am supporting Mr. Schwab because for two reasons. One, because Attorney General Carl Racine has endorsed him, as well as Ward 5 candidate. I can't think right now because I'm tired. But anyway, Mr. Schwab deserves the endorsement from the Latinos Caucus because he is one of many, or the only one, who has trial lawyer experience. You need to have someone who has that because you have a whole office of trial lawyers who are looking for you to give them instructions and guidance. Zachary Parker was also endorsed by Carl Racine. Everyone in the city knows Carl Racine's integrity, his position, how he works with the law, and he knows trial law.
Ms. Steiner, thank you.
Thank you. This time I had my I had a reminder. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steiner. Okay, and then for Kenyon McDuffie, Edgardo Guerrero.
Sí, hola de nuevo. We have supported Kenyon since he first ran for Councilmember Ward 5 back in 2010. As a matter of fact, his first meet and greet was held here at our place. Kenyon has worked to eradicate corruption and to implement programs that benefits all our residents. As a candidate, what we have known for over 12 years, we can attest to his integrity, to his fairness, and also to the dedication that he has to the communities he serves. And that's why we strongly support Kenyon McDuffie for Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Okay, that wraps up the Attorney General race. We have two more. Long night. We really appreciate your patience. Now for the U.S. Delegate, United States Delegate race. We have Wendy Hamilton, Angela Narain, Eleanor Holmes Norton, and Kelly Williams. We have signups for all four, except, well, three of them, except for Ms. Narain. She did not sign up. So candidates speak for 90 seconds. Please, Ms. Wendy Hamilton, 90 seconds for U.S. Delegate.
Thank you and good evening, DC Latino Caucus. It is such an honor to be here tonight with you and to be humbly considered for the endorsement of this wonderful and necessary organization. My name is Reverend Wendy Hamilton. I'm an ordained minister, mother, new grandmother, and social justice advocate. I'm running for DC Delegate to Congress because I passionately want to represent all of the broad, diverse voices of our city on Capitol Hill. I've spent the last 14 months on the campaign trail talking to voters in all 8 wards of our city across all demographics because I believe that anyone desiring to lead our communities must have a presence in those communities. I'm so grateful to have spent time with this group in particular, and you've been nothing but welcoming to me. I've participated in some local forums and functions with you. I testified alongside some of you in support of ranked choice voting and the Voice Act before the DC Council. I'm just excited about the potential for the DC Latino community, which is the fastest growing demographic in our city. I want you all to finally have an influence in the political discourse in our city, soon to be state. My questionnaire reflects my intimate awareness of the issues that are impacting the Latino community, including immigration, education, and representation across our government. And I want to be more than just a representative who talks about issues, but one who offers tangible solutions to those issues. What you see with me as a candidate is what you will get from me as a representative.
Ms. Hamilton, your time is up.
Thank you, Reverend Hamilton. The next speaker is the incumbent delegate, the Honorable Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Thank you for inviting me. My seniority, since being elected to Congress, I have long established a committee, the Congressional Latino Council, to keep me fully informed of the needs of Latino residents and to work with me to pass legislation. I've always had a staff member proficient in Spanish. Among my priorities are protecting the immigrant community, particularly TPS and DACA recipients and mixed immigrant status families. I support giving legal permanent residents the right to vote in local DC elections. I support bills of special interest to the Latino community, Housing in an Infrastructure Act, Affordable Housing Preservation Act, the American Housing and Economic Mobility Act, and Housing Supply and Affordability Act. I'm asking for your support.
Thank you, Congresswoman Norton, and thank you for all of your years of service. Moving on to our next speaker is Mr. Kelly Williams. 90 seconds, Mr. Williams.
Am I on?
Yep, hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kelly Michael Williams. I'm a former Clinton appointee, Concentric Services Director for former Councilmember Vincent Orange, Ward 8 resident and homeless survivor. I seek your endorsement this evening as a candidate that not only understands, but has experienced some of the same challenges the Latino community has continued to do so. And in addition to my earlier responses, I want to emphasize my intent to work with this caucus and organizations like the Central American Resource Center to better address the issues of bilingual education, affordable housing, and immigration. Educationally, I will seek to establish a federal fund that will increase the recruitment, training, and retention of Latino educators at all school levels. Additionally, in line with supporting voting rights, I also will look to spearhead the pursuit of professional licensing for the Latino community, as well as being able to offer them expansion in livable wages, benefits, and pensions. Those benefits, in my opinion, will result in increased access to affordable housing, educational advancements, and so much more. In addition, although to workers' protections that require employers, to pay undocumented workers, the fear of arrest and deportation causes many to stay silent. With that, I will work to explore legislative options that will protect undocumented workers from arrest and deportation after reporting such crimes. For these reasons and many others, I ask for your endorsement, continued support in this race for Delegate for the District of Columbia. And again, my name is Kelly Michael Williams. Although I may be new to you, I'm not new to the district, and I look for your support. Thank you so
Time's up.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you, Congresswoman Norton, Reverend Hamilton, Mr. Williams, thank you for coming tonight. And at this time, we will ask you to drop from the meeting so that we can continue our discussion. Thank you so much for addressing us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we have one board member signed up to speak for Wendy Hamilton, Jacqueline Castañeda for 90 seconds.
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Jacqueline Castaneda, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Reverend Wendy for DC Delegate to Congress. I support Reverend Wendy Hamilton for DC Delegate to Congress because I believe she has what it takes to both engage the Latino community where we are and to do what's necessary to move us forward, particularly as it pertains to the DC political community. Reverend Wendy has spent the last 15 months or so on the campaign trail talking to voters and members of the community who oftentimes feel the Latino community voice is left out of the conversation. She's been committed to listening and to lending her voice in support of issues that pertain to the community like ranked choice voting, immigration, and the DREAM Act. But what impressed me the most about her is her commitment to bringing greater representation to the DC Latino community in her planned role. She's committed to establishing bilingual constituent services office in all 8 wards, making sure her Hill staff has a Latino representation and creating avenues for recruitment of more Latinos educators in the DCPS community where she currently works. She's committed to finding ways to connect with Latino youth and feel the most who feel the most left out of the conversation, especially as the numbers are growing. And we are seeing that DC Latino youth are strongly supporting and being involved in our civic engagements. This is something that I find very passionate, and I appreciate how much Reverend Wendy has been accommodating herself to be able to engage and communicate, not just with our vulnerable population, but with the youth who are going to be the ones taking us forward. I appreciate your time.
Your time is up.
I endorse Reverend Wendy. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castañeda, DC Latino Caucus board member. That there are no other board members signed up. So we will move on to other speakers, beginning for Ms. Wendy Hamilton, Commissioner Salvador Sauceda Guzman. You have 1 minute, sir.
Buenas noches todos. Me llamo Salvador Sauceda Guzman. I'm a proud resident in Northeast DC and an ANC commissioner in Ward 5. I'm here tonight advocating for the endorsement de una luchadora del pueblo, Wendy Hamilton, as she supports initiatives and ideas that directly impact Latinos in the district. Universal basic income, bilingual constituent services, greater effort to diversify federal jobs, as we need more of us in the seats of those offices and not just cleaning or building them. Wendy Hamilton cares about the Latinos que mezcla el concreto that is rebuilding this city. Wendy Hamilton cares about the Latinos that put on the headscarves that clean and feed this city. Nobody should be an afterthought in DC. Latinos ya no más. We are here, we are present. A vote for Wendy is not a vote against the hard work of our current representative has done, but a vote for Wendy is a vote for someone que se va a poner las pilas y las pilas nuevas para la comunidad. Please do not use years of experience as a reason not to vote for Wendy, as those have been the same excuses that have been made to keep us down.
Commissioner, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sauceda Guzman. The next speaker is Ms. Ariana Williams for Kelly Williams. Ariana Williams. Next speaker is Mr. Edgardo Guerrero for Wendy Hamilton.
Hi, good afternoon again. Buenas noches. Quiero secundar lo que dijo mis compañeras y el compañero. I apoyo a Wendy Hamilton for delegate to Congress because I believe she's committed to building bridges with the Latino community in DC, as well as keeping the lines of communication open for dialogue with her office. She works with EL families here in the DC public schools, and I have seen her work and how she, her commitment to help our families. And I believe she will represent that type of leader that we really need and that will get things done. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. And that concludes the speakers for the U.S. delegate race. The last race on our program tonight is U.S. representative. We have 3 candidates for that, all of whom have signed up to speak. Linda Gray, Oye Owolewa, who is the incumbent, and Harry Thomas. So we will begin with Ms. Linda Gray for 90 seconds on the U.S. representative race.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation. I'm Linda Gray, and I am a 5th generation Washingtonian. I am a retired biology teacher, assistant principal, and retired principal of DC Public Schools, primarily Roosevelt and Roosevelt Stay, where we had a huge population of Latino students, as well as the divisional office for English as a second language. So I'm well aware of the concerns and the support systems needed for families who are new to DC. I currently serve as the vice chair of the DC Democratic Party. I am a Ward 4 committee woman, and for the past 4 years, have been working extremely hard to push statehood throughout the country. And in December of 2019, we secured a unanimous vote to support statehood for the District of Columbia through every Democratic Party in the nation. I am the best candidate because this is the work that I've been doing for the past 4 years. I ask for your continued support because I am present in the moment, and I invite you to go to the DNC website, where you will see me give a statehood lesson and a welcome address to the DNC on March 12th, 2022. Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Thank you. Mr. Oye Owolewa, 90 seconds.
Thank you. As a child of immigrants, I understand the importance of this moment, something I don't take for granted. The value of being represented, the opportunity to do more. I am Dr. Oye Owolewa, and I'm honored to be your U.S. representative. Traditionally, this seat was to fight for DC statehood, to talk about taxation without representation. However, statehood affects our healthcare industry, our education, our immigration, our culture. And that's why I've ended this seat of the seat. With these hands, I've vaccinated over 1,000 DC residents since the pandemic started. I talked to the Maryland Board of Health, where we expanded vaccine access into Maryland when we didn't have that before. I've led health forums. This seat introduced 3 resolutions in the Congress and the DOJ, most notably changing our criminal justice system that affected DC residents. We introduced a DC statehood resolution in West Virginia that put West Virginia on notice about what's going on here in DC. I volunteer in elementary schools, getting kids that look like me and you interested in science, so they can have the jobs to afford to stay in DC once they get our age. But in 2022, there is so much more we can do. I worked with the DC Young Democrats to produce a statement addressing student debt.
Thank you. Your
We
time
are
is up.
getting our voice into national matters. I hope to earn your endorsement. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Owolewa, the incumbent, and Mr. Harry Thomas. Harry Thomas. All right, candidates, thank you for joining us this evening, Ms. Gray, Mr. Owolewa. We will ask you to drop at this time so that we can wrap up our discussion here and then hit to voting. Thank you so much. All right, we have two more speakers. Maybe none, because I'm not sure they're in the room. Mr. John Green for Linda Gray. And Mr. Mario Cristaldo.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome.
It's great to be here and to speak in support of Linda Gray. She's been a champion and advocate for our rights, DC rights, the rights for us to be a state. She's well known as an activist in our communities, and she has been with the Latino communities since the time we started the DC Latino Caucus. For that and many other reasons, I believe the DC Latino should support Linda Gray for representing us in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cristaldo, former Vice President of the DC Latino Caucus. Thank you. That wraps up our program. You have heard from many candidates tonight who are vying for the endorsement of the Latino community and the Latino Caucus. Now it's up to you and to us as members to decide which are the best candidates to represent us going forward. If you were listed as a member in 2022 of the caucus as of February 21st, you now have a ballot in your email box that will entitle you to vote in these important elections. On behalf of the DC Latino Caucus, its members and its board, I want to thank you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. We will announce the endorsements by Monday at 12 noon. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, and thank you for joining us. Good night.